Welcome to Best in Faction. I'm Colin.
I'm Chuck.
How do we do this?
I don't know. It's like a podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k.
Something like that, yeah. I'm very distracted by the fact that it's still Lucas's picture in the intro, and it really distracted me from doing the intro because I've tried twice to fix that, and I think Chris has finished the actual correct thing, and I just haven't loaded. I think it's completely on me, but as soon as it was happening, I saw how much you were laughing.
Okay, because Mitch isn't here and Lucas isn't here either. Like that intro is it's just you.
Yeah,
you got to carry this.
For those that are not aware of the joke, our intro has our logo, and Chris reassembled it from our resources, and he grabbed Lucas as the orc rather than Chuck as the orc because he doesn't know which orc is orc. All orcs look the same to Chris. It's a racism thing.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, the intro's been this way for like 3 episodes now. So, I'm Colin, and he's Chuck, and this is a competitive Warhammer 40k podcast. It's actually one of the oldest competitive 40k podcasts, which is a funny thing to think about.
Weird.
So, I'm going to bring Hank in now. Let's see if the technology agrees with us.
Oh, please summon him from the depths of the
world.
How's it going?
It worked.
It's going fine. How about y'all?
Oh, great. So we have no Mitch, everybody. Mitch has got a family thing that's come up, so he's going to be unavailable, but that's okay. I'm sure we'll get Mitch back next time. So we have the wonderful Hank with us instead, who some of you may know from Hank's List Corner or from him smashing you at a tournament. There's any number of things that you might know him from
both those places.
What's that?
So I do know him from both of those places.
Yeah. Hank is at this point, I think my main practice partner. We're really good at giving each other a very informative game, even if sometimes we care just a little bit too much. Just a little bit. So this is going to be a really fun episode. I'm going to do a little bit of updating you guys on things that are going on, but then we're going to dive into a tournament recap like we used to do all the time. And this is going to be Colin and Hank talking about going 10-0 together. And then did I say 10-0 in the name of the podcast? Or I said, yeah, I did. Okay. From there, I thought I said 9-1. That's just what my brain does. And then Chuck also had a fantastic experience of refining and learning what does not work in his chaos list. It turns out if you play 700 points down, it's really hard to go 5-0 at a tournament.
It's only like 600 though.
It's only a third of your list. It's only a third. So before we dive into that, what's been going on in Chuck life?
Well, I'm painting the other third of that army that needs to get put together by the weekend after next.
Okay.
Other than that, looking at what it looks like to move my kid into my house. He's moving out of his mom's house and needs a place. So it's pretty exciting.
That sounds like someone to always play video games with.
Yeah. No, it's I feel bad for Michelle being outnumbered at that point, but otherwise it's amazing.
As someone who's got a whole lot of boys in the house in ratio to girls, it is a thing. But my wife also often says that boys is better because she really would have been driven crazy by teenage girls, and I think that's a fair take for her. Hank, what's been going on with you? You playing any 40K the last few weeks?
Yeah, a whole bunch. Obviously, we just went to the GT, and the 4 or 5 weeks before that, I just spent. I basically just put on my black trench coat and Man in Blacked like 5 different RTTs, trying to get reps to refine guard lists and to say goodbye to my Imperial Knights. I have just been doing a crap load of 40K in the past 6 weeks or so. It's like been 6 weeks with all that
store credit. But what did you do with all that store credit, Hank?
So me and my roommates have over the pandemic, we all kind of got into Commander, and I just decided that one of the fun things that I could do, because I'm going to be playing in so many 40K tournaments that I tend to place well in, is I'm going to try and build a Commander deck just off the store credit that I win from 40K tournaments. So I have like a Commander deck that is the deck that 40K built.
Just full flex.
Full flex.
Now, I played a Tau army that was entirely from store credit. That was one of the funnier things I did, because when they're in 8th, you could buy the 2 Battle Force box sets, and you needed like one. I don't remember what you needed, but you needed like 1 box of infantry or something to go with it, and then that was the army. And so at one point I'm like, well, if I buy one Battle Force box set from this store and I buy one from this store over here, pretty funny. So yeah, and then what's going on with me? I've been playing a mixture of things. I've been playing some video games. I've been playing some Marvel Crisis Protocol. I've been playing some 40K. Went to the tournament last weekend. I'm going to the what's it called? Rosehammer City?
Rosehammer, yeah.
Rosehammer, which is a 110 person tournament in Portland, which is like the largest tournament. Do you remember a tournament in Oregon that's larger than that, Chuck, in your many years?
No.
Okay.
Most of them are small.
Yeah, the last
community's really been picking up, so this must be just a big sign of that.
Yeah, the last time I went there was 50 people, I think, and that was before the pandemic.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
That was the Stomptown Stump or the Stumptown Stomp or something like that. That was the one where people told me that I was a fluffy Eldar player because I had a Wave Serpent in my list. So I'll remember that forever.
Because the Wave Serpents are pretty bad.
In 8th edition, yeah, just terrible, just terrible. I actually won that tournament. Weird how those two things are related to each other. Anywho, yeah, I've been having a lot of fun. I've also been pushing myself to hobby, which Chuck commented on. Before the tournament, I hobbied like crazy on MCP and 40K. I'm basically using, because Marvel Crisis Protocol has like, this person does not have to look like anybody else. I'm teaching myself to paint on them because I'll go, you know, like Chuck and I were talking, I really want this guy to be bright. Can you help me understand? Or Ghost Rider, how is this guy going to have fire on him? And so I'm trying to learn different tricks because once I've done it, I don't then have to do it on 19 other guys. So that's been really fun. I did take my list to tournament last weekend, and it was 100% painted models by Colin.
I think that's awesome. I think what's even better is the way you talk about hobby has shifted. You don't talk about it like a chore anymore.
Oh yeah,
I
enjoyed painting that army. I think the deal is I haven't always picked paint schemes that I like, and I think it's a really good learning for me was that I like how the purple and gold looks on my Marines, and I like how black and gold looks on my Ravenwing. And so the fact that while I'm painting, the models are continually looking better and better to me. And also, my wife and I watch a lot of TV in the evenings after we've kind of shut the house down for the night. And I'm tired of that. And I certainly don't want to lay in the bed for several hours every night. I just have too much energy for that. So I put a table in the bedroom. We're watching TV. I'm painting. She's working on her laptop. We're chatting with each other. Really great. Really, really great. So, yeah, that's lots of hobby. I'm doing some more for the Rosehammer. That's not true. There were 2 Talon Masters in my list that had not been painted by me, and they're both going to be painted by me before the next thing. Yeah, let's talk about a couple things. First of all, Charity Hammer dates are locked in. Charity Hammer dates are September 14th to 17th. September, Colin, you've never done it in September. I know, fans. It turns out I have to schedule it around ATC and WTC and Games Workshop tournaments. And the weekend I originally had it on is now the Tacoma, what's it called? The Tacoma Open? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Tacoma Open.
Which is the big GW event. So that didn't work because I decimate the competitive scene locally when there's Charity Hammer. Like if you want to win a tournament, and there's a tournament on Charity Hammer weekend in Western Washington, you should go to it. Because almost all of the best players in the Pacific Northwest will be doing Charity Hammer. So September 14th to 17th, we are going back to basics. What we're doing, I'm trying to get War Games Live out here. And then what we're going to do is 2 many camera angle, high quality tables, and then a third stream that will just be interviews and codex deep dives and analysis of the game. And that third stream will only run during the normal hours of the day. The 2 game streams will go all the time. And then the other thing we're going to do is a lot less commentary. The feedback we got about Charity Hammer is that the commentary is great, but the value of Charity Hammer is that it's like a big sleepover party and everybody knows each other and the talk at the tables is really valuable. I think that's a fair take. So I think not letting you hear the players talk actually took everybody away from the experience when we actually need to get closer to the experience. Like you guys want to know more about the crazy sleepover party. You want to hear more about shelves being missing and stuff and less about what the commentators think. That's a completely fair take. We'll probably do commentary on the final big game, but we'll probably do that commentary with people who are there who played against that. The one thing that worked really well, I thought, was taking the 2 people from the semifinals that lost and having them do commentary on the winner game because they just played both of the lists, right? And they understand how those lists work and what they do. So I think that was really cool. So we're gonna do a little bit less hours too. Last year we did Thursday morning to Sunday afternoon. I think that was a little bit too much. So we're gonna go back to what we did before, which is Thursday afternoon to Sunday afternoon. So just 72 hours rather than 84 or whatever.
Sure.
So those are the big changes. So that's what I'm working on, and I'm actually more scheduled ahead of time than I ever have been. So we're going to keep pushing on that and see if we can keep that going. The one thing, the stretch goal, is that I would like to, on Wednesday, I would like to do a Marvel Crisis Protocol event. And the reason I'd like to do that is because a lot of my friends that play 40K also play Marvel, like Hank. So it would be fun to do that, but it would get attention from the Marvel community, maybe raise some money. But the bigger thing is it would let us do a full tech practice run for the event.
Sure.
And that would make me sleep a lot better on Wednesday night before the event starts on Thursday, because we've had some problems in the past. Especially last year, where the technology just collapsed through nobody's fault of their own. Everything broke. We lost content. Like, it was just bad. So that Marvel event, here's what I'm thinking. And Hank hasn't heard this yet. So this is a fun thing. I want to do a 4-round event where people have to bring, say, 30 characters.
Okay.
And then each game, the characters they use and the team tactics cards they use are gone.
Okay, got it.
So you're doing a gauntlet where each game you have less people to choose from. And I think that'd be a really fun way to have people play characters that maybe people haven't seen.
Okay.
And you won't just get, my thought is, if you just do a competitive event, from looking at LVO, everybody plays the same 3 factions. And I don't think that's, so basically they play like Shield, Avengers, and Brotherhood. And that's it. So my thought was, if we do it the other way, we might see some more variety. Maybe someone will play one of the worst factions. So I'm thinking about that. If you're local and you're really into Marvel, feel free to reach out. We'll see if we can't make it happen. All right, Charity Hammer update. I also told people we're doing a stream game right after this. I've got some sickness questionably in my house. Had to put that off. We're going to try to do a practice weekend next weekend and stream 2 games. I haven't invited Hank to that yet. But Saturday, Hank, if you're free, I'm going to try to do some 40K practice next weekend.
Sounds good to me.
Great. Donald's free too. So now we've got 3 people. We'll try to pressure Chuck into putting adulting aside.
There you go.
He's going to say no to that, just so everybody's clear. Okay. Let's talk about our tournament. Now, one thing, guys, I completely buried the lead on. How many people were there? I don't remember.
50.
Was it 55? 50?
I think it was just 50.
Okay. I thought it was a little bit more than that. Said, oh, you know what? I do a show called This Week in 40K, and the notes are open.
There you go.
50 players exactly. Hank had it spot on. So we all went to the pecking order Peeps of War GT. All of the tournaments done by this person are all bird themed.
Mm-hmm.
So Peeps of War GT, 50 people, Olympia, Washington. And I have to say that is almost an entirely new community to me.
Yeah. So
I'm going to say that of the 50 people that were there, that I had met previously, 7.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys? Where would you guys put that number at? You've been playing in more tournaments recently, so it's probably a higher number.
Yeah.
More than half, but still.
I had met most of those guys, at least in passing, mostly because I've been to a couple of GTs they've run down there. But there's not a lot of cross-pollination between like the people that go to the pecking orders and like the Jason Bird Aberdeen community and the Seattle and North community.
Yeah, which is new. It used to be that there was just like a certain number of us and we just traveled around and played at all the places.
Well, there's so many tournaments now. If you want to just play like 4 a year, you just play the one that's near you. Like,
right. Exactly. Did I play anyone that I've played before? I don't think I did, right? I don't think I played anybody that I've played before. I'll correct that as we go through the games. I'll correct that, but I think I played 5 new opponents, and I can't tell you. Oh man, I don't think I've ever played a Washington tournament where I played all people I haven't played before, other than like my first one. Mm-hmm. So It used to be that I had to play Mitch or Chuck at every tournament. That was just the rule.
Mm-hmm.
So, anywho, 50 player in Olympia, Washington, which is about 3 hours from me, maybe an hour from Hank, hour and a half maybe from Chuck. And it's run by a guy named Chase, who does a great job. I think he's still a little newer to running tournaments, and he's doing a great job. They have a hotel that they rock down there that I thought was very fine, completely acceptable. I love being able to walk from my hotel room down to play 40K, and not have to do any sort of travel. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you guys say about the event before we do the show our work podcast?
Well, I think one of the really notable things for me in the event was just the space that they took. They decided to do both ballrooms and open them up together.
Mm-hmm.
And they could easily have stuck another 20 tables in there and it would still be an acceptable space. Like, I don't think I brushed up against another human being in both days.
Yeah.
Right. Didn't have to ask anybody to move or like, hey, your cart's in my way. None of that stuff occurred. Like, there was so, like, I don't know, 10 feet between some of the tables. Like, it was ridiculous. It was, love it.
They could get 100 to like 90 to 100 players in there and have everyone be comfortable without breaking a sweat.
Yeah. Well, they're actually talking about doing a 5-player team event. In that event.
Pretty excited about that.
So especially since I believe 3 of the 5 members of my team are on this podcast. It's that's going to be great. But I agree, there was lots of space. The thing I really like is the alpha game tables and such that are exactly the size you need are cool. But when people do the 8x4, I really like. It's a huge value add to me to be able to put stuff on the sides of the table.
Fully
Books,
agreed.
dice, models. I'm clumsy. I don't want to have to try to put everything away when it dies. I need to have I'm going to put it over here and then I'm going to carefully put it on my cart. That's a big value add to me. So
agreed.
I thought that was cool. All right. So we went to the event and we're going to start by talking about each of our lists. And when we do that on our show, we talk about why our lists. Kind of what sorts of things we learned as we were making them. If we have takeaways of what we learned in the event, we'll do that. But yeah, that's the plan. Chuck, why don't you go first talking about your list?
Well, because I'm not quite ready. Here we go.
Okay, hey, why don't you go first talking about your list?
All right. I took Astra Militarum / Guard to this event. This is going to be the first event I bring Guard to where I have a list that takes advantage of the full model line. Like, I have a couple of GT results that are me just like, well, what if I took 11 Lehman Russes and see what happens because of that? And that was fun and cute and everything, but that's mostly just a skew / damage profile check on most people. So this is like the first time that I took, like, I'm just going to make like what it looks like on the box art for Guard and see how well it does. And it worked out pretty well, obviously, but the list is going to be obviously based around, for the HQ slots, I have Ponyman, Lord Leontinus. I have a command squad that is rocking a Bulgrin bodyguard that has the silly banner that Phineas. The finial of the not Nyamandarin 101st or whatever it's called.
Hank, is finial a vocab word that everybody needs to learn? Is that a thing?
It is definitely a vocab word that you might find on the ACT, but it is not something that I would get mad at someone for not knowing what it is.
Does it mean banner, or what does it mean?
It's like a banner / streamer / thing you use to announce your personal heraldry, that kind of thing. It's like
interesting.
It's a funky word for medieval banner.
It's interesting. It's actually the thing at the top of the banner, which is interesting.
Oh, well, there you go.
I was wondering.
Sure.
A distinctive ornament at the apex of a roof, pinnacle, canopy, or similar structure, but it also says an ornament at the top end or corner of an object. So fantastically interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess fantastically interesting might be overselling it.
Sure. Definitely, it's GW has a bunch of banners in 40K already, and when naming relics, they pulled out the old thesaurus and what could technically fit here that's different.
Yeah. By the way, I have no chance of remembering the banner that's in my list. Just so everybody's clear.
Yep, 100%. Then down from there, I have a tank commander that's sporting the relic gun gatekeeper, as well as the warlord trait that gives me 3 redeploys. The 3 redeploys is very important. Then for troops, I've just got 4 units of normal Cadian shock troops. 2 of them are rocking 2 melta guns. 2 of them are rocking 2 plasma guns. Just because of that typo in the rule book that GW hasn't fixed yet. And when they fix it, I'll change it. But until they fix it, whatever. Then I only have a single unit of Kasrkin. Kasrkin with the Barbican's Key. The combo is as the combo does. The Kasrkins can teleport, drop somewhere, poop out a gajillion mortal wounds on 2 to 3 targets, and then almost always die in response. In fact, in all 5 of my games, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened. They all teleported, they all shot once, then they immediately died. It's a thing that I fully expect GW to nerf at some point, but until they do, I will find 100 points in my list for competitive play for it. But I refuse to put more than a single unit in the list. I just think it's a gimmick and it's a crutch. And if it ever goes away, it'll leave a really big hole on my list if I have 3 units of it. Then down from that, I have 2 units of Bulgrin. Those are also pretty key to the plan that my list is going for. They all just have the Bulgrin Mauls for the melee hits, and then 2 Brute Shields and 3 Slab Shields. Sorry. 3 of the invulnerable save shields and 2 of the 2+ armor save shields, so that they have a nice mixed profile. And then the tanks. The tanks in the list are a pair of the new Rogel Dorn tanks, and then the tank commander. So the goal behind having only 3 tanks in the list, which is probably a departure for most people, because 3 people at the tournament saw me roll up and were just like, wait a minute, that's not 11 tanks. I was told to expect 11 tanks from Hank, and I was just like, well, I'm giving you guys the old hoodwink here. I went for a different thing. Mostly what the thing that I'm trying to leverage here with Guard is that I encountered that if you have 11 tanks, 9 tanks, 7 tanks, even down to 6, it's vanishingly unlikely, even on player-placed terrain, that you're going to be able to hide all of them. So what happens is you'll set your tanks up, and then you'll go second. And your opponent will just go, I have a bunch of anti-tank firepower, and that is entirely too many Lehman Russes over there. I need to do something about that right now, or I am just going to get smacked in the damage race. And oftentimes, you'll just lose 2, 3, sometimes 4 Lehman Russes because you just had to sit there and take an alpha from your opponent's army on the chin. So the entire point behind this is I want 3 quality tank hulls that I can use the redeploy warlord trait to make sure that with player-placed terrain, my opponent doesn't just get to go ham and remove a bunch of my firepower on the top of the first turn if I end up going second.
Right.
Also, if I end up going first, I can use my redeploy to aggressively position these things on the line, not caring about hiding, so that I can give all 3 of them the advance and charge order, and then have them advance. The advance and shoot. Advance and shoot order. Yeah, not advance and charge.
Yes,
advance
please
and
charge.
Shoot order, 100%. The advance and shoot order, so that they can just all crack out D6 plus 12 inches, get angles and whatever the thing is they need to get, and then get my first strike in with those 3 quality tank holes.
That entire paragraph makes me so sad that
yes.
I'm going to move to the line, and then I'm going to go 12 plus D6 and shoot you. No.
Yep.
Rude.
Definitely. And then if I'm on a bad board and my opponent goes first with enough firepower that I think that they can get to my tank holes, I can just pretend I'm a Tau player and cow-yon these guys straight into reserve, because the warlord trait lets you do that.
Mm-hmm.
The list also has 2 scout sentinels with heavy flamers. They're there just to be random shenanigans stuff out on the board, to block advanced move stuff, and to just be board presence.
Yep.
And that is effectively the list. So like I said, the point of the list behind the tanks, I already explained. But the point of the build of the Bulgrins and all the infantry in the list is looking at Guard. If they want to run good secondaries and have a consistent secondary plan, they need to have board presence. They need to have guys in, because like you're going to be taking inflexible command pretty much every game. If your opponent gives you a kill secondary, generally Assassinate is not always the best, but if you have an army that is going to run at you with a bunch of characters that they can't hide, then that's a good thing to take. But Bring It Down, sometimes Banners is a great one. But Boots on the Ground is the one that you actually have to build for in your list, and you actually have to have a plan for it, because it doesn't start scoring until turn 2, and you need to get your banner up to the middle of the table, which means you need the Bullgrim Bodyguard on your Fenial unit. That makes the unit just ridiculously tanky, and you need extraneous units of guardsmen. I didn't go like the 6 or 7 or 8 that I've seen some people running. I have 4 units. And in general, the units just get move, and they go 14 inches. They unlike what's the retrieve battlefield data, you don't actually have to get 6 inches past the center line. You can just get everyone like a millimeter past the center line, and boom, it counts for boots. So yeah,
usually probably give you 1 turn.
The Karsakins do, but the problem is Boots doesn't actually score until turn 2, and every game I played, Karsakins were dead on the bottom of 1. Because
just launch them immediately.
Yeah, launch them immediately. They do their thing, and then they're dead, because I want to combine that with my tank shooting to just get ahead on the damage race. As when we talk about the Chaos Knight games that I play, that will become very important.
Ooh, yeah.
And that, I mean, pretty much. There is roughly my work on what the list is supposed to do. Basically, give me options, don't give up free points when going first, and still have all the hallmarks that make Guard great. Bullgrin are important because they're just in and amongst my list, and they make it to where people don't want to blitz me because I have 10 Bullgrin, blitzing me isn't free because I'm going to overextend and kill a couple of those screening units, and now you can't do anything about that. Well, Ponyman says that this 5-man unit of Bullgrin can fix bayonets and throw like 24 strength 7, weapon skill 2+, AP -2, flat 2 damage, melee attacks at you, and it's fun. I have some thoughts for how I'm going to change the list, but I imagine we'll get to that after we do the whole thing.
Yeah, we'll do that at the end.
So there we go.
Cool. Yeah, great. There you go. Complete Cancer from one of the best codexes in the game. Which I don't mean negativity. I do mean it negative for the game, but not for Hank.
Sure.
When I talk about my list, it is no less cancerous. So go ahead, Chuck.
We'll take a little break from that level of gross.
We probably shouldn't use cancerous. I should use like toxic or something that doesn't call out people with a health problem.
Yeah.
Carcinogenic.
Oh, I like that.
Likely to give you cancer.
Yeah, right. All right.
So I wanted to bring Zeech, and I've been playing with Abaddon on my list. That was wrong. You can't actually put him in a Zeech demon list and not break their secondaries. So I've been moving around trying to figure out different things to replace him, because with Zeech, Zeech demons are very good at shooting something, but if something does get into you, they're not good at removing it. So I've been looking for pieces to help replace that. So this is a take on that didn't work super great, but did have some good learning. So that's what we'll get out of talking about it. So I brought Bellicor. I brought Bellicor for 2 reasons. One, Bellicor himself is pretty good, but he also unlocks the ability to take Noctic powers, and that allowed me to then put on my Fate Skimmer, my next model. I put the Shrouded Step, which is the ability to teleport a unit of infantry demons during the psychic phase. This is really important when you have flamers, because everybody loves to charge something else, then swing around and touch your flamers, and then having a psychic power that pops them out and lets them continue to shoot is incredibly powerful. Beyond that, I brought a second Fate Skimmer. He's all about the mortal wounds. He's got the Bolt of Change, Smite, and then I'll spend the CP to give him a cast for Boon of Zeech pretty regularly, to give Bellicor a toughness 8 if that matters. Toughness 8 Bellicor does make a lot of lists very sad, but sometimes it's not important, so then you don't have to worry about that CP. And then lastly, I took a Fluxmaster on disc. He's another caster, but what probably is most important about him is he's infantry. So he can toss himself out 12 inches into the center of the table, throw an advance, whatever, get to the center, cast Warp Ritual, and then just like all the Eldar before me, someone else can be like, hey buddy, that's dangerous, let me just go ahead and move you back here to a safe spot. The nice thing is the Heralds also give rerolls to 1s to wound. So I found a lot. I'd pop him out, do the warp ritual, and then I'd bounce him back. Or mental interrogation a few times. I'd bounce him back, but when I bounced him back, I'd get to reposition him. So I very carefully made sure he was in a spot that was covering somebody who didn't have a reroll ones for damage and shooting, which I think that whole package is really great. As we'll get to with Be'lakor, at 420 points, he's not bringing enough. I actually prefer the power over actually the Be'lakor model, which is 400 points for a psychic power is a little too much.
I think that just to add to that, I think you articulated it well when you said, my whole army is built on the idea that you can't shoot my characters. Mm-hmm. And Be'lakor is a character that everybody can shoot. And so your army has like nothing that heavy weapons can go into at all. And then Be'lakor comes down and it's like, oh, all my heavy weapons have a thing to shoot at. Huzzah.
Yeah. And they're like, well, I could waste them shooting at pink horrors, or I might as well shoot up there. And over time, like I don't think he ever just got aced. No, he did get aced against Chaos Knights. But there was a knight that punched him and then exploded, and then another knight shot him, and then another knight charged him, right? Like it took a lot. So he didn't disappear immediately, but he didn't last long enough, and he doesn't do enough. And a lot of what he does do is prevalent on, like, if you get a bad charge roll or something, it's like, oh, well, then he's just 0, right? Let's do the rest of this list here. So we've got those characters. From there, I got 2 units of pink horrors. Pink horrors are amazing, particularly in the meta with all the shooting. You put a unit of pink horrors out, and like Hank's list has got the Rogal but that first Rogal is not going to kill him. So he shoots 2 Rogal into my pinks. Value. I'm done. I don't need anything else, but there's a pretty decent chance a couple of guys are going to come out of that unit. And that is 140 points. It's a pretty good value. From there, I also brought 2 units of 10 blue horrors. I've been using these a lot to move block, and then also just like put them on the backfield objective. They're just in the way. Their bodies, they're cheap. 3 squads of 5 flamers. I think it's the cornerstone of the list. It's the reason I'm fully zeeched, right? I can use the warp storm table to get +1 to shoot. You do that plus Be'lakor giving out a reroll 1 Zora, and then a reroll 1 Zora on to wound, and a +1. Everybody knows flamers are gross. The nerf really only impacts them in Overwatch shooting. So it's pretty fine. And if Be'lakor gives them the full rerolls to hit, it's still a nerf to auto hitting, obviously, but you can still do quite a bit on Overwatch.
No one let you Overwatch anyways.
More people let me Overwatch now. It's almost like they do more Overwatch now than they used to. Yeah. But it's also disappointing Overwatch. Like I killed, I think the best one I've done so far is killed 2 Gene Stealers, which threatened them to not be able to overrun, but they still made it. Like but I made him scared, right? Like that's at least something. From beyond there, it's because I don't have enough flamers. I also grabbed 3 exalted flamers. What's important about these guys is they shoot really good. Their gun that shoots hard is 3 shots, strength 8, AP 4, 3 damage. But they're characters. And so they sit in amongst all these 3-up saves and say, if you can shoot through this entire unit of pinks, you could then try to shoot at this guy who's got a 3-up as well. It's just not like they apply that firepower turn after turn after turn after turn, which I think is fantastic. And then finally, I finish up with 5 screamers. Screamers are kind of a waste. They can't really do anything in combat. If Be'lakor gives them the full rerolls and the Fate Skimmer gives them 6s to hit auto wound, and they go in, they start to do something. But let me tell you, as far as I am as a player, I'm never going to get a situation where Be'lakor is going to land here, is going to be here, and the Fate Skimmer is going to be here in my command phase, and the Screamers are going to be here in order to, and then have them do something important the next turn. It's too much planning, and it's too much planning around polishing a turd. So when I talk about the list Colin alluded to earlier, I'm playing with like 500 points behind my back. I feel like Be'lakor, the best thing he brought was the ability to teleport my guys with a psychic power, and the Screamers didn't do much. So I have a lot of changes when it comes to the end of the thing. But so that's the list. I talk quick about secondaries because even in the games I lost, I got a crap ton of points. Reality Rebels is fantastic. Warp Ritual and Psychic Ritual are actually really good these days. All the armies that did like a really good job of denial, mostly being Thousand Suns and Tyranids, have just disappeared. So they're free points. They're just hanging out. If you have a plane, you can get it. And then finally, you can drop up banners or despoil realities depending on how fast your opponent is. And I can just have a secondary game that just sort of takes care of itself while I focus entirely on primary and eliminating my opponent's army. So that's, I think it's great. I think demons in general can do this. You don't have to be all Zeech. You can bring other resources in and still accomplish this as long as you bring enough psychers. Like I've sort of set myself the goal. If I have 3 psychers in every army, so even in the worst case scenario, I just launch 1 at the point for 3 turns in a row and they die, and I get those points. And I think that's fine. Yeah, that's sort of me. I think that is important. Just Hank talked about playing in all these RTTs to get practice for the GT. I basically just only had time to play in GTs to practice for GTs. So I'm learning a lot about lists in the middle of GTs, which is not my favorite place to be, but it's where I'm at.
Fair enough. So let me take you back to 1995 when Colin bought the 2nd edition Warhammer 40K box set, and it came with Dark Angels. It came with Marines, who I painted Dark Angels because I determined that their paint scheme was the coolest. Current Colin does not agree, but 15-year-old Colin thought so. Then I discovered that their bikes and land speeders were black and were jinky and move really fast. And so I bought a bunch of Ravenwing. Now, all that Ravenwing is metal and most of it has fallen apart. But I bought a Dark Angels army from a friend recently. And then Dark Angels were crazy good. And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to return to 1995 Colin's enthusiasm? I was not disappointed. I did make motorcycle noises. I did make land speeder noises. There were sound effects even at the top table. It's the way that it happened. So I originally played on our practice weekend all Ravenwing. I played 9 attack bikes, 3 vengeance speeders, 9 attack bikes, 3 vengeance speeders, 20 Black Knights, and then characters. And that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. But when Hank and I talked about it at length, we determined that list loses going second to things, especially guard, because it doesn't have any board presence. So if it doesn't win the violence off, it doesn't get to play. It also doesn't do missions well. So I thought about it. I have to give credit to the fact that several Dark Angels players won tournaments last weekend, using a lot of Deathwing. And I was like, oh, right. So if I have 10 Deathwing Terminators and they have a Storm Shield, giving them a 1-up save, 0-up in cover, and then I put the banner on them for -1 damage, and they're already transhuman, let's run some math on what happens when people shoot at those. And I was doing guard tanks, and I was doing Tau guns. Sorry, Donald. And I was doing knights. And like, as I did it all, it's like, yes, the Terminators can die. But if they die, it means that an entire turn of firepower has gone into them. And even then you might bounce. I also thought about the fact that close combat is scary for my army. But the reality is, if the Terminators are moving forward on the board each turn, any close combat army has to be really afraid of that. So what I did is I changed the list. So now I also took Samael out. Azrael is nearly the same points as Samael, gives a 4-up Invul aura, more command points, like he's just better. So I took Azrael, which was really fun. I took the metal model from the 90s. He was older than several of my opponents, which I really appreciated. Then I took 2 Talon Masters. One of them had Arbiter's Gaze, one of the most crazy relics in the game. Always hit on 2s no matter what's happened, including in Overwatch, and ignore cover. What? So that guy advances around the table. He hits things on 2s, and then you charge him, and he's saucy with his hit on 2s in Overwatch, which never actually happened. But had it happened, it would have been great. Then I have another Talon Master who's got Rights of War. That's really important. This army is neither a Ravenwing detachment or a Deathwing detachment. This is a thing I got asked over and over again. If your army is all Deathwing, then Terminators get OBSEC. If your army is all Ravenwing, then bikes, not attack bikes, and Outriders get OBSEC. I can't do any of that if I take both. I don't need any of that. Instead, I have a Rights of War Talon Master who flies in formation with the Deathwing Terminators, right? Making them Rights of War, but it also makes anything else that's, I think, core or character I don't remember exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Core and character.
Yeah, so core characters a lot in this army. So continuing my characters, I had the Apothecary on bike with Selfless Healer, and he also had the I didn't give him the plume that makes everybody go faster. I think Selfless Healer is actually wrong. We'll talk about that later. So then I had character-wise, I then have Bannerman. Bannerman is nutty. So you could take a Blade Guard Ancient. He gets the Deathwing keywords. So, okay, now he's a Deathwing Banner Bearer, which also gives him Transhuman, which he didn't need. Then his banner, you can give him the Relic Banner, and you give him the Deathwing, the Ancient upgrade in the book. All of that together means that he gives out +1 leadership. I don't care about that. He makes it so that if anybody dies near him on a 4-up, they get to punch or shoot. That doesn't matter to the list, but man, is it hilarious. He gives a +1 at the beginning in the command phase. He gives a +1 to melee to a unit. So he does that for the Terminators every round. The Terminators are 10 Terminators with Thunderhammer Storm Shield. Now they're hitting on 3s again. I'm Dark Angel, so if you charge me, I'm hitting on 2s. I can also spend a CP to hit on 2s. That means that the full rerolls from Azrael can be on Black Knights or attack bikes, and I'm still rerolling 2s with hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s if I want.
Mm-hmm.
So that banner is actually doing that incredible work, and none of that is the fact that it also gives -1 damage to the Terminators. So the banner does all of that, which I think is a lot of work for a 90-point model. I feel like he's really doing some effort for us. Is that all my characters? Yeah, I think so. 2 Talon Masters, Azrael, Apothecary, and Banner. Yeah, that's right. The rest of the list is 10 Deathwing Terminators. I gave them all Thunderhammer Storm Shield, except 2 had Cyclone Missile Launchers. The Cyclone Missile Launchers are free, and there are absolutely games where I shot them. Sometimes the Terminators just hang on an objective is my game plan, and in that case, it's nice to have 4 crack missiles, or in some games, 4 frag, 46 frag shots. I don't remember what game that was in, but I'm sure it'll come up and we'll remember. So that's the Terminators. Then I took 3, 3, and 2 attack bikes. I needed to drop an attack bike to make everything fit. All of them have multi-meltas. And then 10 Black Knights, and then 2 Vengeance Speeders, and 5 Infiltrators. Yeah, that's the list. So now that you get to stay in Devastator Doctrine all game, that entire army, everything that's black in that army, which is everything but the Infiltrators and the Terminators and Azrael and the Banner, everything else gets 3 inches of additional movement. That means that the Talon Masters go 21 without advancing. It means that the Black Knights and attack bikes go 17. It means that the Vengeance Speeders go 19. All of that can advance and shoot without penalty. Excuse me. All of that can advance and shoot with -1 to hit. That's great because the Black Knights often are hitting on 4s anyways due to -1 to hit on a thing, due to a forest, whatever. And so that makes it really easy to justify advancing because everything in the army that's black, if it advances, gets a 4-up invul against shooting for the turn. If it moves, it's 5-up invul. That is enormous. That is such a big deal. When you have attack bikes that are just shrugging giant hits off of them with 4-ups, it is so good. So the army's crazy fast, quite durable. The 6-up Feel No Pain from the Apothecary is on everything that's not a land speeder, basically. And then the speed is nuts. Everybody can advance. The bikes advance 23 inches. If the Black Knights charge you, they're 31 attacks at strength 5 AP 1/2 damage, which is a crazy profile that people don't realize. So like there's lots of situations where the Black Knights will blow the crap out of something and then charge something else and beat the crap out of that. The Black Knights have taunt on them. So as soon as you've sent them out to do a thing, you know that on your opponent's next turn, they're going to put all of their shooting into them. Or charge them with Bulgrin, as Hank found out in a test game. So list is incredibly fun, wildly powerful, and we'll talk about it more as we go through our games. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about our day 1, and we'll each go through 3 games. So we'll do 9 games here. Time-wise, we want to average under 5 minutes per game, but some games will be longer than that, and some games will be less than that. To remind all of you in the audience how we do this, if the game was a smashing, We are not going to focus on turn-by-turn play. We're going to talk about the general takeaways and things we learned from the game, and we're going to focus our time on Guard versus Tau and Dark Angels versus Space Wolves and a few other specific things that are very interesting. So who would like to go first with day one?
I can go.
All right, Hank. Who do you have first?
All right. First up, let me pull this app up.
Why don't I summarize lists for you so that you can focus on what you're doing here?
Sounds good.
Because I do that for this week. I've already looked through some of these lists and talked about them. So,
gotcha.
Pairings, and then your
Zach
name is Hank.
Filey.
I don't know Zach's last name, but I think Filey's a reasonable idea. So he's Tau.
He is Tau.
And
so
he's got Borkan, and he's got some commanders and an ethereal and 2 units of 10 breachers and 2 units of Kroot, a Pathfinder unit, Hammerhead, Riptide, and then 3 Devilfish. There you go.
Yep. So this game is like Zach was a great opponent, and he did his level best to try and make a go of it. But this was I knew what was going to happen in this game from the moment that he chose to use his Master of Montka, not Montka, Kauyan Warlord trait to do the 3 redeploys, because I was like, okay, cool. I have my redeploy Warlord trait. You have your Warlord redeploy trait. We set all the terrain. We dice off. I get the first turn, and I'm like, okay, well, here goes both of those Hammerheads and 1 of the Riptides into reserve, and I'm not going to be able to shoot anything because everything else is going to be hidden. Cool, that's neat. And then I start getting into the mental space where I'm going to unpack here, and here. I'm going to hide tanks here, make it hard for him to come on and get shots. And then he just he puts 1 Devilfish into reserve, and then repositions a couple of Kroot Hound units, and then doesn't put anything else into reserve. And I was just like, oh, okay. And I was just like, okay, cool. Hammerheads are impossible to hide. So I unpack my entire list, and between Dorn, Tank Commander, and Barbican's Key teleporting Kasrkins, I blow up both Hammerheads and drop 1 of his Riptides down to bottom bracket, 2 or 3 runes left. And then Mortars blow up a bunch of Kroot Hounds, and I'm like, okay, cool, neat, go. And he tried, like I said, he tries his best, tries to get out on the table and do things, but I've removed 3/4 of his anti-tank. And so I just have 3. I have 2 Dorns and a tank commander that can go wherever they want, shoot wherever they want, and force him to hide what little he has left. He has the Pathfinders, and he has the Breachers, and he has all that stuff, but none of it can survive out on the table. And I just unpack, take the entire table, and I score a 99 out of 100 by virtue of the fact that he only gave up 14 points on Bring It Down.
Yeah, I think that an important note here is people talk about how 40K can be a go first game. A lot of the time when that's happened, somebody lost in deployment. Now, this might be a newer player. I'm not, no negativity towards your opponent, who what you said was a very nice guy. That's all fine. But I think it's important to understand, because my opponent also struggled with deployment, and we'll talk about that a little later. It's important to understand that if your game is being decided by who goes first, it could be terrain, it could be lists, it might be that someone deployed wrong. So just a thing to think about in your practice games.
Oh no, if he uses his Kauyan redeployment to put both Hammerheads off the table, completely different game that I have to play completely far more cagey, have to be far more conservative, and it's going to be a game of inches and angles, and I would have had to have been there for the entire time. That's the only big mistake play-wise that I saw that he made. When for the rest of the game, he made good choices. It's just that one little opening gave me a way to just bladow. There went 3/4 of your anti-tank, and that's the game.
Yeah. So then you played Evan Bursek, I believe is his last name.
Yes.
And he was playing Word Bearers, and I feel bad about this for him because Word Bearers are neat. Playing Chaos is neat. Yep. I feel bad for him in this game because of what you're about to talk about. So he had a Demon Prince with wings, and just for amusement, I want to know what a Ghollax is, Chuck. Ghollax.
The Decayed?
Yes.
Well, that's a demon weapon that ignores phase caps, minuses to damage, feel no pains, and if memory serves, wounds when you hit with it.
Okay. I was just super amused by the name. Then
Very
a Dark
powerful.
Apostle, 4 Discordant, Master of Possession, 5 Accursed Cultists, which Chuck loves that unit. Big unit of Legionnaires, big unit of Chosen, 3 units of 6 Possessed, it looks like. Master of Executions, and Chaos Spawn, which Chuck loves. But then 3 Obliterators from mere 270 points.
Yep.
Sorry,
How
whoever
much is a
you are.
Rogel Dorn?
How much is Rogel Dorn?
My Rogel Dorns are right around 300 points because I have tank cases on them.
That sounds right. I think 3 Obliterators should be about the same price.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like if I take the tank commander, like the tank aces off of them, they're like right at 270. So it's yeah, okay.
Ouch.
So yeah, this game is like I said, opponent is a great guy and he makes the go of it that he can. But what typifies this game is, you might notice from having heard what the list was, the only real guns of consequence he has are 270 points of Obliterators that started the game in Deep Strike. So,
well, I don't know if you know, they move like 4 inches.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
4, not 5.
It's one of those two. They're both the same.
Yeah.
Not far enough.
No, as a guy that played Terminators all weekend, they're definitely not the same.
That's fair. So yeah, basically this is the list. This is a game where I get to play guard, where my opponent can't really shoot me. And good lord, like, if you think that guard is ridiculous like just in general, you have not seen guard in a game where it doesn't have to worry about its opponent's shooting phase because it doesn't have one.
Isn't Word Bearers also the Feel No Pain army?
Word Bearers is the everyone gets Feel No Pain against mortals, and then he had it's either a psychic power or a priest chant or something that was able to put the big Feel No Pain of power on whatever big unit he puts in the table. In the center of the table. So one of the big problems here is I actually won the roll to put down the first piece of terrain, and I windmill slammed a forest in the middle of the table on the center point so that he couldn't hide anything on it, because I've played our Zach enough to know that the whole thing with Word Bearers is they have a pretty good secondary game plan, but the majority of that secondary game plan is put a big scary thing in the middle of the table and get a bunch of points.
I'm a Crater Man myself.
Yeah, fair. And like, yeah, and it was just like, okay, I know what your plan is. There's a forest, so you can't hide in the middle point. And he was like, okay, I guess I just have to throw stuff in the middle and see what happens. And
oh dear God.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I chumped up a unit of Bulgrin to just be on the point and made him OBSEC so that if he decided to charge them with something, because this list also doesn't really have a lot of OBSEC. It has a lot of kill you, but the OBSEC is like the Accursed Cultists and the Legionnaires in the back, like the Possessed, the Chosen, the Oblits, none of that's OBSEC. So I was like, okay, here's 5 Bulgrin on the point. You have to actually kill all 5 Bulgrin, and only one of your units can advance and charge. We're gonna see if you can do it. He sends out his Chosen, kills all but 2 of the Bulgrin, so he doesn't even flip the point from me. His characters come out behind the Chosen brick, and this is the only game where I actually got to use the Kasrkin trick more than once in the game, because I was just like, I did actually Barbican's key the Kasrkin on turn 2. I Barbican's keyed them up 10 inches instead of moving them 6 to get the optimal angle on things, and then I just said, hey, look, they're in finial range. Blah, kill like the shooting phase, obliterated all of the Chosen. I blew up 2 of the characters behind the Chosen. On the first turn, the tanks went wide on the flanks and killed like 9 or 10 Possessed. And yeah, the bulk of this game is just he comes out, scores most of his points on turn 1 and turn 2, and then he just doesn't have an army.
Yeah.
So
guard just choosing parts. Yeah.
If he'd gotten a wrap off on the Bulgrin,
yeah,
and you had to fall back the Bulgrin, would you have enough CP still to go full ham on the?
I would have, yes, because I studiously didn't spend any CP on anything, because I was like, I want to save enough CP to be able to emergency breakout, and then it only takes 2 CP to do the whole go ham thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like the list starts with 2 CP, then Ponyman takes it up to 3, and then turn 1 starts and I go to 4. So I was just like, I'm just going to be conservative with my CP and make it to where I can do emergency breakout and then still go ham. Not that going ham mattered. Like, going ham mattered because it was a bunch of shooting that got to cut right through his Theono pane.
Yeah.
I still just had a bunch of Dorns that, like, one Dorn didn't shoot turn 2 because I killed everything that I could see. So I just had a whole extra Dorn that didn't do anything. So this game was not really in doubt, mostly because he just didn't have the shooting to make me play honest. And that was beginning, middle, and end of that game. Great guy, great opponent. Didn't make any real big play mistakes. Just didn't have a list that was capable of dealing with what I brought.
I actually think that GW manhandled CSM in the update.
I agree.
Taking away Armor of Contempt from everybody and then making Marines a lot cheaper to make them good while ignoring CSM was really, that was a decision, certainly.
Agreed.
I'm now not worried about any CSM list on the table, and that's a sad place to be. Because I thought that CSM was bringing, I thought that the Emperor's Children list in particular was bringing a very different challenge than a lot of other lists that were in the meta. We saw that at Las Vegas Team Tournament when we were doing pairings. That different people wanted that list versus everything else. So I think GW is taking away some variety here, which is too bad.
Agreed. I agree.
All right. Round 3.
Yup. This is the game.
All right. This is where Hank will be spending the majority of his time. He played a fairly bad player. No, I'm kidding. Got member of our community, member of our Discord. I was supposed to play him today. The lovely and incredible painting Donald Plummer. I'm going to spend more time on his list than I normally would because this is the only real game Hank has that's interesting.
Pretty much.
Sorry if that's a spoiler. I apologize. So this is Tausept, which is important. Then he's got a commander in Crisis Battle suit with a lot of words after it.
I believe it's he has like 3 of the Ion Pulse things of the Melee Flamer and the Reroll Everything Warlord trait.
I'm sure that's the Reroll Everything Warlord trait because he and I were talking about how much that offends me. Yeah. That Tau have a Reroll Everything in shooting and combat Warlord trait is so nutty. So then Commander Shadow Sun, a Kroot Shaper, Long Strike. I know he loves his Long Strike. Then a big unit of Crisis Battle suits. It looks like they've got some of them have the Fragmentation Projector. Actually, they all do. And then they all have Cyclic Ion as well. Somebody doesn't. One of them doesn't have the Fragmentation Injector.
There's 4 in that army.
Yeah, and then
that becomes important.
A unit of Stealth suits, 3x5 Kroots, 5 Vespids. I love Donald. This is so great. And then 3 Riptides.
Yep.
There you go.
I want to real quick. The Long Strike is obviously good, right?
Yeah.
But he has an ability to hand out a marker light essentially to a core unit. And the airburst fragmentation grenades are out of line of effect shooting, so you're not going to get a target lock there. So him being able to say like, "Hey, you're going to get a marker light for that shooting," makes a big difference when you're doing your out of line of sight shooting. So he's bringing more than just one vector of like, I do 1,000 damage to a tank. He's also allowing the indirect fire to come back to the list. I think he's actually really important to Tau these days.
100%. Okay, so first of all, a bear stating that this is the high quality. Again, up front, this game is the best game of 40K I have played in probably 12 months. It is like no shade on any of my other opponents. This game literally comes down to the last die roll that I make on the bottom of turn 5 to flip an objective and give me a win. This is one of the reasons why I love 40K. This games like this. One of these games in a tournament is more than I expect most of the time. One of these games every other tournament is more than I expect, honestly. If I get one of these games every 3 tournaments, I feel as though I'm hitting my quota. Okay, so Bear's mentioning that there was a mix-up and the table that Donald and I played on was on the lower tier because like the lovely and talented Jason Bird and Warbird Battle Labs provided a lot of the terrain for the event. And the way that he does the tournament setup is the top half of the tables have terrain that is like rated and balanced for tournament play. And the bottom half of the tables are generally where they put, the people who are just not winning a whole lot of games. There are more cool and fun and just like awesome looking terrain that doesn't have as much of an eye put towards balancing it for competitive play. And Donald and I end up, despite being both in the winner's bracket, playing on one of those tables that doesn't have amazingly competitive rated terrain. However, because Donald goes first, this ends up being an amazing game because it allows him to close a bunch of gaps that I would have been able to exploit because of the terrain, and allows us to both set up on effectively an even keel. If I get to go, like Donald and I talked about it after the game, and we were just like, if I get to go first, this isn't really a game because my alpha just gets to hit him so hard and I get to unpack so much before he gets to do anything.
Hank, just real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
The table you're talking about is the lava table, right?
The lava table.
And so it has a lot of very small pieces of terrain, like very hard to hide behind them, right? That's kind of what you're talking about.
It actually has a bunch of very large pieces of terrain.
Okay.
Almost none of them are L's, and all of them are dense as well as light cover and obscuring.
Okay.
So if any model on the table touches any piece of the terrain, they're -1 to be shot at.
Right. Wow, that's rough.
Yes. It's rough. Like, it's one of the reasons why I was able to win the game, because he's Tau. He cares a lot more about -1 to hit than I do. Also, I have the finial banner, so I get to ignore that. He didn't. Sure. But yeah, in general, this game does have a terrain asterisk next to it.
Mm-hmm.
But so we set everything up, and he gets to go first. And basically what he does is he made the slight mistake of setting his terrain too far forward so that he wouldn't have been able to hide too much stuff if I would have gotten to go on first. But he got to go first, so he was able to correct that. So his entire list is based around providing absolutely no target profiles, because he just has the 3 Riptides that use their Nova reactor to pop out, shoot some stuff, then back up 2d6 inches with fly out of line of sight. And then he has the Crisis unit that gets all the buffs. They get like full rerolls to hit, ignore to hit mods. Then they also get
auto advance
marker light, auto advance. There's no cold star in this.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. He has 2 commanders, one of which is what's her face, Stealth Lady. Yeah.
Shadow Sun?
But yeah. There you go. Shadow Sun. That's her name. And like, so he does that. And then the big Crisis unit does I have to shoot first, but I get to fire and fade 6 inches. So he moves up the 3 big battlesuit things, he shoots with them, then they all disappear, and I get nothing to shoot back at. So this game, he sets up turn 1, and I don't have the ability to hide a lot of stuff. So basically what I did is I just put 10 Bulgrin in one of the pieces of terrain on the line, figuring that if I get to go first, I'll shoot them all up the table and just get a bunch of board presence early and make him have to deal with that. Because while his list is very good at shooting and then giving me no damage in reply, he's not very good at taking points and holding points. Mm-hmm. I've fought this matchup against Donald specifically a number of times, and I know that if you just get mildly durable stuff onto the objectives and don't let him shoot it for free, he has a real problem in scoring primary points. However, Donald gets to go first, and Donald rolls pretty above average and just manages to ace a whole 5-man unit of Bulgrin on top of 1, through the -1 to hit, through the -1 damage, through the invuln save, just blows it right up. And I'm like, well, that's a problem. That's not generally supposed to happen. And so I go with my plan, and I just decide, okay, I'm going to use my mortars to remove all of Donald's trash, to blow up his Crude Hounds, to target his Vespid, to hit anything and everything that is a throwaway unit that he's going to throw on an objective that he can go claim an objective with after he uses his shooting to clear my trash off of points. And yeah, the entire game is basically just, it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth of me having a unit of dudes get move, and then go 14 inches, just barely cross the center point, and then hunker down in a piece of -1 to hit terrain, and then me spending 1 CP to pop transhuman on them to just go, I don't think that you can kill this entire transhuman to -1 to hit guard infantry squad with 2 of your units. and most of the time it ends up I was correct. There was one point where he actually managed to kill all but one member of a unit, and I spent 2 CP to insane courage him. Donald is right. Yes, on top of 1, he also did use the airburst fragmentation launchers to kill 3 of my mortars on top of turn 1. That also made it to where I wasn't able to just completely obliterate his trash. It was a process over the game of the mortars would often get the Ponyman full rerolls, and I would blow up a unit of crude hounds and then just go, cool, that was fine. That was well used. But anyways, there's one point. There's one moment where he kills a guard squad with extraneous random shooting down to 1 dude, and I spend 2 CP to insane bravery him because that dude, he's the Voxcaster, gets move from the Master Vox and then goes 14 inches over to one of Donald's objectives that has a stealth suit unit on it and goes, I'm OBSEC and you're not. Also, I'm getting a point for boots. So that guy by himself denied Donald 4 points and got me 1 point. Turns out I beat Donald by like 4 points. So tiny little plays like that of me sending random survivors of just blown apart guard units over to flip his objectives is like the only reason why I'm able to pull this game out. The big tilting point of the game is when we spend turn 1 and turn 2 just trading trash back and forth. I'm shooting my indirect at him. He's shooting his indirect at me. And then he decides to make a play because I have put my command squad out onto the center point to try and get some points on the get an extra point for being within 6 inches of the middle of the table with a banner. And I have a 3-man unit of Bulgren in front of them to character block for them and everything. And I'm just like, this is going to be pretty rough for him. He might not be able to deal with this. We'll see. I know this command squad is very tanky, and Donald decides to mess up his order of activations by not mess up. He makes a choice to expose his crisis suit unit to where he can put the entire crisis suit unit into the command squad. But he has to shoot something with he has to shoot the Bulgren with something first, which would mean that he can't use the fire and fade strat. So he goes for that, blows up one of the Bulgren, and blocks the destroys the character blocking, and then puts the entire crisis suit unit into the command squad. And I'm like, I've done the math on this. It'll be close, but I should be able to survive. And I just get completely plastered. The entire command squad just gets obliterated by the crisis suit unit. I just rolled bad on saves. I rolled bad on feel no pains.
We should be clear that the reason the math is good is because of the Bulgren bodyguard.
Yes, the Bulgren bodyguard.
A normal command squad does not go, haha.
Yes.
What's important about that is it's all in the Bulgren bodyguard.
Yeah.
So it's swingier than it might sound, because if he just flubs a few saves and dies early, the rest of them have no chance. They're gone immediately.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah. The sibs go off, and he dies to just the sibs. So all the plasma, all the missile pods, like all the air bursting, is just like, rip! And I'm just like, oh, well, that was unfortunate. I was expecting to at least have something left, but I don't. So it just turned into blood mist. And I was like, okay, well, I have to make a play now. And he has brought out his big unit of crisis suits, and I can use Ponyman, I can use tank orders, and I can get angles on all of these guys with the tank commander and both of the Dorns. And I set up to get angles on it because I know this is the big tanky unit. It has like multiple shield drones. It has the unit commander that has the auto stim injector for up Feel No Pain to step up and tank for all that stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I've seen this unit just tank entire shooting phases before, so I'm going to expose all 3 of my tanks to it. And then the first Dorn lines up, and the first Dorn by itself kills the entire crisis unit. And it was a thing of, I want to say beauty, but it ended up just being kind of a feel bad for me, because I was just like, well, I brought out 3 tanks because I thought that's what it was going to take to kill this ridiculous unit. And they all, like, the dude that, blew up all of the shield drones with the first volley from the big cannon, and then the dude with the auto stim injector steps up to take the first save from the damage forward Doran cannon, fails his 4-up invuln save, fails the CP reroll on the 4-up invuln save, fails all 4 feel no pains, and just immediately gets plastered by the first save he has to take.
Exactly the same situation as the Bulgaren bodyguard.
Exactly that, yes.
Tough, but I'm not today. Bye, everybody.
100% that, and then just the rest of the shooting from the model just plasters the rest of the unit. And then I have this tank commander and this other Dorn that have absolutely nothing to shoot at because he didn't give me line of sight on anything else. So I've just exposed my 2 other tanks for literally no gain. Not that it matters. Like the math could have gone a different way, and if I would have needed more than that first Dorn, then it would have been the right call to expose that. I had no idea to know that, so I'm not going to say it was a play mistake on my part. It was mostly just the dice going, we're going to give you a feel bad right now. And so what happens then is Donald's just like, well, that sucked. However, I can see all 3 of your tanks now. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but it turns out that Longstrike can, in fact, one round a Dorn by himself. Because that dude is +1 to wound. I learned so much about Longstrike in that game. I have played Longstrike a number of times, but most of the times when I play against him, I've never let him shoot because I always manage to find an angle because he's very impossible to hide, and I tend to get first strike on him. So I know he's a hammerhead that tells another hammerhead to get +1 to hit. That's basically the beginning, middle, and end of my knowledge about him. But he was given marker light hits to crisis suit units, and also that dude is +1 to wound all vehicles and monsters. So he actually, with his railgun, wounds the Dorn on 2s. And his crazy seeker missiles that are 1-shot each that do like 2d3 damage or whatever, they're also wounding on 3s. And like one of the cornerstones of why I have the Dorns in this list is because they're toughness 9 uniform profile. And there's a lot of strength 8 out there that really doesn't like rolling 5s to wound. And it was a little bit upsetting / a shock to my system to go, oh, you wound him on 2s, do you? Well, I have this invulnerable save. Oh, that's a railgun. If AP -6. Cool. So yeah, freaking Longstrike comes out and is just like, but what if that Dorn that one-shotted that unit of crisis suits, what if it just died with no extra resource commitment from anywhere in my army? And yeah, he just died just right there in one go. And then the big the Gundams come out, and they just are like, well, we're only strength 8. We don't like shooting that Dorn you've got there, but you do have a nice toughness 8 tank commander that you have exposed for us. And between, I think he has to put 2 or 3 of the Gundams into the tank commander, and he might have to come fit. There you go, Riptides. He might have to like spend one other random thing, but the tank commander also gets obliterated. So I've exposed all 3 of my tanks and lost 2 of them in a single shooting phase, which is not how my list is supposed to function. But so tip of my hat and much respect to Longstrike for being able to put out that kind of anti-tank firepower. I am suitably chastised and educated for the future. So the back half of the game is down to he has to start putting Riptides onto points in order to score them. And I still have an amount of survivors that are on that are just like clinging to cover and hiding from all of the indirect and all of the Tau firepower. And I'm able to just kind of continue to throw the trash onto objectives to stop him from scoring too much on primary. And also to get my boots on the ground points.
Yeah.
And
when you're talking about this and I'm thinking about the lists, you both have sort of the same number of threats.
Yeah.
But you have more trash.
Yes.
And you have the mortars, which are more efficient at getting his trash. So it feels like the game is really about you just having more nothing, right? You just have like a bunch of bodies that exist, and existing bodies get points.
And like that was basically our summation of the game is that because both of because all of our threats are very mobile and able to hide and able to use stuff, we get to choose when they come out, and we can stop our opponent from choosing to force the issue. It basically became a war of trash, and I am a guard player. I had the advantage in trash.
You have the game's first trash.
Yes, I have the game's first trash. And yeah, so it goes back and forth. There's a couple of plays that allow me to stop him from getting too much points, and one of them is the last Dorn on like the last turn of the game, or on turn 4. Decides I can move out 10 inches and I can shoot something. I'm probably not going to be able to actively kill any one thing by myself, but that it doesn't matter, because the whole thing that he needs to do is charge a Riptide and then use 3 inches of pile-in movement and 3 inches of consolidation movement to put his big fat booty on an objective that only has 1 Riptide on it and make it to where he doesn't get 4 points for that objective. And so that happens. And then the entire game comes down to I end up killing Shadow Sun with Casterton shooting. And that is incidentally the only 4 points that I get on Assassinate, which is a big mistake to take against Donald. He's very good at hiding his characters. Assassinate is a trap. All of Donald's future opponents don't fall for it. So what ends up happening is the entire game comes down to it. He gets ahead by like 6 points or something, and he has 2 Riptides come up, and he's like, okay, cool. I am going to now shoot your mortars and shoot the little 5-man surviving unit of guardsmen I have over here in the corner. And the only other model I have left is Ponyman. So it's like Ponyman, 3 mortars, and 5 dudes of trash hiding in the corner. And Donald just comes up with those mortars and rolls, and he's on full Kaoyan. He's like 4s to hit are double hits. And then that Riptide comes up over the terrain and is like, I see those 3 mortars, and shoots his overcharged big gun and rolls not a single die over a 4+. Misses with all 8 of his shots. And then rolls his 2 plasma shots, rolls 2 4+, gets 4 plasma hits, and then rolls 3 1s to wound. So only 1 mortar dies, and I still have 2 mortars. So because of the fact that I still have 2 mortars, and the 5 guys over in the corner also got shot up by a Riptide. They transhumaned, and there's like 2 of them left. So I have 2 points on boots on the ground, because I have a platoon unit in the left-hand side and a platoon unit in the right-hand side. So that's fine. That's gravy. And so I only need to find 5 points in order to win. And so he has like a 2-wound Riptide as his only model on the center point objective. And so Ponyman decides to be the hero that we all know that he can be, moves up 12 inches to touch the center objective, and then uses his plasma pistol. And he also could have charged, but uses his plasma pistol that's got 2 shots at flat damage 3, and just double taps the thing in the last Riptide with 2 wounds on the point and kills it, which gives me a second objective on bottom of turn 5 to score, getting me 4 more points. And then I get a point because I killed something on the center objective. And those points give me the win. And it's round 3. I'm covered in sweat. I am mentally exhausted. I shake Donald's hand and congratulate him on one of the best games of 40K I've had in a hot minute.
It's one of those games where you're really happy it was round 3, because then you get to rest before you play again.
I get to drive home and sleep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we so far we failed horribly at the 5 minutes per game. Let's see if we
that is
accurate. No, it's great. I think the Donald game in particular, I think there's lots of learning.
Yeah,
in there. So,
I can do my last 2 Chaos Knight games in 5 minutes total if you want.
No, we might have to ask you to do that.
Okay.
Chuck, so let's talk about your. So you ended the first day undefeated. We'll talk about what that meant story-wise here in a minute. Chuck, you got to play 3 games as well, as it happens, and you started off with Marty O'Connell, who is a newer competitive player. that we've been seeing at tournaments, and we've been watching him get better, which has been neat.
Yeah,
I think. Really nice guy, hangs out in the Aberdeen meta. He was rocking the Ulthway, which I think everybody knows that I'm already happy because I'm talking about an Ulthway list. Eldrad, and then a Farseer and a Farseer and Jane Czar. 10 Guardians, 2x5 Rangers, 2x10 Dire Avengers, 1 unit of Howling Banshees, 3 Shining Spears, 3 Shining Spears, 3 Shroud Runners, 3 Shroud Runners, 5 Wind Riders, 5 Wind Riders, and a Falcon. This is probably the meta Eldar. Not necessarily Ulthway, but basically the way we're seeing people succeed with Eldar is tons of bikes, because they can do the missions, they can hold the table, they can hold back guard tanks from seeing things, right? There's a lot of value they can do there. And it builds under a game plan, which I think Chuck's going to talk about, where Eldar can say, I'm just going to score my points and I don't need to kill anything. And that's because Eldar doesn't kill things hard enough for the current meta. I think that's the direction all our players have to go. It's counting to 100.
One important thing to note about all the bikes plan, the way they changed the behind enemy line secondary, you now get 15 points if you can just once per turn get 1 unit ending in their deployment zone, because you now get 3 points for ending in their deployment zone.
It's going to be very important to this game.
And Shroud Runners are extremely fast.
Yes.
So, okay, Chuck.
All right. So, first of all, I want to reiterate what Colin said with Marty. Like, I've played him before, and he has definitely improved. And also, this list that he's put together was something I hadn't really conceived of prior to playing this game. So there was a lot of me like, double check what's going on. I need to I felt like I was making micro mistakes and then fixing them as we went. A lot. So it was a little bit on the back foot. Also, just very rusty. Hadn't played in like 2 weeks. We're playing, I forget the mission, where you measure from the corner to the 30-inch mark, and that's your whole deployment zone. That's a very large deployment zone for behind enemy lines. As we talked about, he's already on that. This just makes it even more enticing for him. He then also takes the scout mission, where the Rangers can get points on the table. And then he takes no prisoners, because my list bleeds no prisoners. It gives up 12 to start with, and then with the pinks and the blues splitting, it easily gets up to 13. I take Reality Rebels and Despoil Reality. Despoil Reality is a action objective that you can do on an objective that is not in your deployment zone. So there's 3 just lined up right down the center in front of me. It completes on your next command phase or at the end of the game. This is really important to being a good demon player. I take this only in very important matches. Like if you take it in the wrong match, you're just going to get a 0 on a secondary. You take it in the right match, it's going to be amazing pressure. So in this game, he goes first. He pushes up along the flank on me, and he jumps into it, and he's like, okay, I'm going to he's going to do the scout with the unit of bikes that he's put in a really awkward position for me. And then he runs the other unit of bikes to block for it, to prevent me from interacting with it. This is kind of a mistake. He's underestimating the amount of firepower that Zeech brings. He's thinking I'll have to solve some of his close combat. I do not. Flamers immediately obliterate these guys with it at speed. But that also allows me to position myself so that I now own this objective up in the top corner, and I'm really far from him. So all he can send to it is bikes. So I know that like a Fate Skimmer and a couple unit of Flamers is gonna hammer this down. So now we're fighting over the center, and my Flamers are staged at one objective holding it and can easily jump over and take the center. So what I've done is I've set myself up to control the primary flow for the rest of the game, which I think is very important, because around turn 1 into turn 2, I start to understand that he is going to get his secondaries. My army is also going to get its secondaries. So the differential is going to be who can take the center and stay there. And that's where I deploy my ace in the hole for this. I give Be'lakor a T8, and I run him out in the center of the table. Every gun in the Eldar army, minus the Fire Prism, is T7 or less. So all of it wounds me on 6s. He
has no Fire Prism. It's a Falcon.
Oh, Falcon, whatever. They're all the same to me.
That's elf racism.
It is. So I put Bellicor, like Bellicor just runs to the center of the table. I give him an unfortunate education on mental interrogation. Something I'll share with everyone else. The rules for mental interrogation are not that I have to see you. The rule is you have to see me. So if I'm a giant 20 wound model and you're hiding behind a wall with some windows in it, you could probably see me. It's very easy to interrogate you. So I start getting those in. But then, like, turn 2, I get that. But then he's like, oh, okay, I get it. And he starts moving around. And I'm like, this is a mistake. I should have just taken Warp Ritual. So that turns into a whole thing. What happens is I start doing damage to his army in his deployment zone. And that is taking away units that can come and do behind enemy lines while I continue to keep Deep Strike out of my deployment zone, because I have those blue horrors. They're not doing anything in this match. So they're just like, nope, you can't come in here. So I start putting pressure on him for behind enemy lines. I don't actually, like, I get him down to a 13 on behind enemy lines. But what's more important is I force him to throw his army into me. And Zeech demons shoot 12 and 18 inches, and they destroy everything in that space. So because he's having to throw so much so quickly to get his points, I churn through him real quick. And then once the board is less compact, I start taking over the primary. I only scored 4 more points than him on the primary, but I only won the game by 12 points, right? Because he also did very badly on Scout, because I saw what he was doing, and I was like, oh, well, if we're doing secondary, I'm going to try to... He didn't place them well enough. I used my teleports, and I was like, no more Rangers. So between those two things, it's like, that's the game. He played it really well. I think it's a bad matchup for him. He wants to come into my zone, and my zone is cheap and easy for me to get kills. But more importantly, I think, is he's shooting, and he's not shooting with quite enough mass to really scare me away. So I think if I had just run at him, he'd have been dead. And that's kind of always an Eldar problem. But it was a great game. I really enjoyed it. It was definitely, there was a lot of thinking and figuring out, which is always fun. Kind of what Hank was talking about, but to a lesser degree.
Well, you were rewarded with playing the Chaos Knight player, Jake.
Yeah.
And I feel like you, from memory, will do a better job explaining this list than I will do reading it, because Chaos Knights.
Well, I will tell you, it is 2 big knights and 6 little ones. He has...
Well, 4 of them are stalkers, 2 of them are carnivores.
Yeah. So punchy and shooty all around.
And then, he's got 7 little knights.
Oh, is he?
And
because there's an executioner. Yep. There's executioner in the back holding the back.
And a Megara.
Yeah. The Megara is built to be the durable guy with the feel no pain and just do all the stuff. And then the Desecrator has the relic super gun. That relic super gun means that Bellicor just can't hang out. And we're playing the mission where if your Warlord's not on the table, it's a 4-up to get command points. Bellicor was on the table for 1 command phase. And I failed every 4-up. What's really great about that is that I really don't need my CP. So it sucks. Like, I'd rather have a bunch of rerolls and things like that, but it wasn't like, it's not as damning as it might be for some other armies to have that happen to them. Let's see. This game's going to be short. He destroyed me because I played 1 turn wrong. So we're going to talk about that one moment I played wrong. He ran that Megara up into my army, charged a bunch of stuff. Actually, sort of, like, I would say, underperformed his damage output there. But he did place a giant knight directly in the middle of my mostly MSU army. And I know he's going to auto-explode it if I kill it, right? So it comes to my turn. I make the choice that I think is very, very wrong to leave 1 Exalted Flamer in combat with the Megara to avoid Overwatch. And I move everything else back mostly past 7 inches out, hoping to, like, get lucky on the explosion and not get completely wrecked. But I couldn't also just expose my army to the rest of his army shooting, so it's a very complicated thing. And then I bring Bellicor in from reserve. I'm right up on him. I've given him -1 leadership. I think I actually just landed in my deployment zone at like 5 inches from him, because he's just outside of my deployment zone, but I use my deployment zone as a place to land. By not falling back with the Exalted Flamer, I meant that I couldn't do a bunch of damage other than through psychic powers to him before sending Bellicor in. And there really wasn't other targets for me to be focusing on. So then I went to the psychic phase. I slam, I think, 7 mortal wounds into him over the course of all of my powers. He's like, well, I'll just make 5 5-ups. It's fine. You've barely done anything here. And then Bellicor goes running in, and Bellicor hits on 2s and rerolls. So I think he hits with everything, but then he rolls like 3 2s to wound. And I don't have any CP because I haven't been generating any, so I don't reroll any of that. So Bellicor sort of like just pets him a little bit and says, "You're a good knight, good boy. You should definitely join my house. It's going to be great." And that guy turns around and whacks Bellicor for his trouble. I don't even think I bracketed the guy. Like, he was at full. And then it comes to his turn, and he backs him out and shoots into Bellicor, does a bunch of damage. He comes up a little short and doesn't kill Bellicor. But then he charges that guy back in, takes out Bellicor. Comes back to my turn, and I do what I should have done on turn 3, is just hammer that guy with flamers. Like, he's got a lot of defenses, but you know what? Fully stocked flamers doing all the things that flamers do will just burn through anything. So I hammer him with flamers, hammer him with all the flamers. He explodes. He takes a large portion of my army with him and puts wound counters on the rest of it. It was just like... And then I looked at the table and I was like, well, there's one more giant knight that I now have no chance of doing anything to. And I think there was 4 more baby knights on the table, walking up, holding the center, holding his gemmaries. Chaos Knights have a great secondary game, and he's on no prisoners beyond that, so he's already done a ton of damage. And I just looked at the bottom of 3, I looked at the table and I was like, well, that's game. I played the rest of the game I could, got the most points I could. Yeah, I kept that loss to 82 to 95. Again, being in a good zone of like being able to score points even when I am destroyed is a great army for me, and I really enjoyed it. I do think if I had played that turn 2 Giant Knight differently, I could have swapped this to like a couple of point win. It's hard to say because there's so many moving pieces, but like that's definitely the learning piece for me, is like flamers are better than everything else in my army. Make sure they're engaging constantly.
That makes sense. So third, you played Christopher Weatherford, who brought Custodes, which is an army you've played before. He's got Emissaries Imperatus, which I don't know what is.
They are the ignore modifiers to hit and wound. Most importantly, they are not 4-up field note pains against second powers.
Okay. Blade Champion with the Eagle's Eye. Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle Jet Bike. Trajan. Weird. Why would you have Trajan in the list? I'm kidding.
It's crazy.
Yeah. A unit of 3 Custodian Guard, then 3x3 of the Spear guys, then 2x5 Prosecutors, and then a Contemptor Achilles Dreadnought, a Vexillus Praetor. That's Banner Dude, right? And then 2 Caladiuses.
So this is shooting Custodes. Shooting Custodes are still very powerful enough to kill my units in close combat. So I'm going to go with the short form of this game. If you find yourself in a similar matchup, I drew him out in a bunch of different directions. Getting my secondaries, Reality Rebels is great if I'm drawing my opponent out into all different ways. As units got too far from each other and got isolated, I swooped in on them and killed them because I knew I could kill them and then there would be nothing to charge me back. Repeat. And then just shoot pinks up into the center and be like, I want you. I shoot a unit of pinks onto an objective, and what I'm saying is put some Custodes here. Because if you don't put some Custodes here, I'm going to win. And if you do, those guys are going to get killed. And that's sort of how you just like, I spread him out and pulled him apart and then blew him up as he went. Shooting Custodes are too slow to really challenge my army. I think you have to play a very tight game where you're like, you pick your triangle objectives and you just stay there and try to weather whatever I'm doing and then look for mistakes in my plan. And then at that point, you're hoping that I screw up. You don't have any agency. So I think kind of a bad matchup. The game was still very close, 78 to 66. But that's because stand vigil and banners and all that. Like they do really good at scoring. But I ran him out of material by the end. So.
And that ends the day 1, 2-1, right?
Yeah, pretty good. Great.
Yeah, it's like an RTT that went pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So my first opponent, I've been thinking about how to talk about this. On the way out there, I'm going through every list in BCP and talking to Chuck about it, because that's what we do. And we get to this guy's Dark Angels list, and we're very confused by it. It has Devastators without drop pod. It has mixed war gear on the Terminators. It has no no banner for the Terminators. It's just, there's a bunch of strange things happening. There's Outriders, there's normal bikes. It's just a bunch of stuff. So I think, okay, well, this is the Dark Angel somebody owns and would like to play with. That's fine. Go to a tournament if you want to go to a tournament. You're not going to get sassed by me, but I have brought the most ridiculous thing I can build. So in the first round, I get paired into the Dark Angel's mirror, and I meet my new friend Dan. And Dan is 68 years old and plays in tournaments nonstop, and is playing with whatever he owned from Dark Angels without additional hobby. Fine, right? So his Terminators have a bunch of crazy war gear because that's how his Terminators are geared. And his bikes and his attack, like, it is exactly how a lot of people play 40K that we are frankly accidentally disrespectful to, right? We don't mean to be, but in our competitive focused podcast, it's tempting for me to be like, here's all the things this guy did wrong. He's 68 years old, still playing 40K competitively. Good for him.
He's not participating in what we're doing. He's
not.
He's having a different experience.
Yeah, he's playing a different thing than us.
In a weird and interesting scenario.
His mission objective was to have fun playing games while he loses. That was what he went in with. So what I wanted to share with people is I knew that I saw from the list and from our experience setting up that I knew there was a skill gap. But one of the things is I don't think you have to lose to learn. I think you can win and learn. I think that you absolutely can. And I think the way that you do that is you watch for mistakes in your game plan, even if your opponent doesn't execute against them. So this was my first game with the updated list. I hadn't played it. I acknowledge that my Terminators with -1 damage is going to just beat his Terminators without -1 damage. So my Terminators advance forward. I went first. The whole idea behind Azrael in the list is if you go first, Azrael gives out a 4-up invul aura to bikes and infantry. The Terminators don't need that, but all the attack bikes and Black Knights do. If I don't do that, I have no invul. And so if you are fast and get good angles on me, I just die. So the other thing that does for Azrael, though, is it lets him, in certain games, walk up to the middle of the table, and then you can position all the Raven Wing poked in at a 6-inch aura. Everybody can have reroll ones to hit. Everybody can have a 4-up invul, even if they only moved, which means they're now hitting on 3s, but you're still getting the benefit. It also means in certain games that you can be immobile with your Dark Raven Wing shooting, which makes it hit +1 and still have Azrael throw out the invul. Okay, so lots of value from Azrael on the list. We talked about that earlier. I basically ran forward at him with this giant castle of invuls and feel no pains and shot him. And I killed a lot. And then he ran into a side objective to deal with my infiltrators with some of his stuff. They fought each other for a while I tabled the army. I took Oath of Moment, Shock Tactics, and Codex Warfare. He took Engage on All Fronts, No Prisoners, and Assassinate. I think Assassinate is a terrible secondary. I think that good opponents will play, like Hank was talking about, I think good opponents will play out of you getting good points on it. And 6 to 9 points is not a good secondary. So that's killing 2 or 3 characters.
I want to pile onto that.
Okay.
I have 7 characters on my list. None of my opponents took Assassinate. And I was sad every time they didn't.
Yep.
Yeah. And like, if I could consistently get 9 on Assassinate, I'd probably take it sometimes. But I find myself struggling to get 3.
Yep.
So,
well, and it's bad elf feels, right? Like we and I both played Eldar, and we were so excited when people took Assassinate.
Oh yeah,
because like we've got Farseers and Warlocks that are just hiding on our side of the board and don't need to go anywhere.
And if they do get cornered, they can just go 26 inches and be somewhere else.
Yeah, we're just
the meta shifting to shooting. It's so much easier to hide those characters. Assassinate's gone down in value.
I think it's only 22 inches, but I'm still with you. Okay, so that game was over. Wonderful to meet Dan. Just not a great Dan experience for Dan. Actually, he had a good time, and we had a fun time, and we talked about Dark Angels. We talked a lot about who had the real Azrael. People came by and asked which one of us was Chaos. I responded both. So there was a lot of Dark Angels humor. On the final turn of the game, we did charge Azrael into Azrael. Neither of them died. So that's not really that interesting.
No, that means that Azrael's super durable.
He is super durable. Then I went into game 2, and I immediately got dropped into Votan. And That's interesting. It says that I played the same person in round 1 and round 2, but that is not true.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Seems
The BCP has me playing. Oh, I see what I did there. I typed it wrong. Okay. I played Colby Fouché in the second round. Colby was playing Votan. Colby is a newer competitive player whose list I cannot read. So I will attempt. It's just a big block of text. So I'm going to attempt to tell you about this list. It was Yimmer. I'm sure of that. He had one big tonk. Okay. He had 3x3 of the bikes, who I think are incredible. So fast, really offensive amounts of shooting for how fast they are. Like really silly amounts of guns. Every time he shot them at me, I got confused and had to ask him to explain it again. Because it's like all of them have a bunch of shots. And then one guy has more shots, and then 2 other guys have additional shots. Mm-hmm. It's a heck of a thing. So they're very fast, many bullets. Then he had a unit of 9 Terminators. That's not what they're called. And a unit of 8 Terminators. What's that? Hearthguard. Which I was very impressed about until after the game when Chuck told me how many points they are. So we'll talk about that. Then he had a few units of just the normal bros, and then all the characters that they normally have. The way that his list is supposed to work is the bikes are supposed to, I could tell the way he was playing it. The bikes are supposed to rush out and hold your opponent back and do damage to him. The Terminators then redeploy and do their mortal vomit on someone. And then you're hurt enough that the big tank and the rest of his army can kind of get in position to kill you. I think that's absolutely what he was trying to do. I basically set up with everything but my Terminators hiding. And said, okay, my Terminators are as far forward as they can be. They're out in the open. They're not going to have -1 damage on the first turn if you go first. Okay. And so I put them out there, and on his first turn, he moved in all 9 bikes and 10 Terminators to shoot at the Terminators. Hearthguard to shoot at the Terminators. I realize now that if I call them both Terminators, it will be confusing. So all of and then the Outriders also kill Sim Infiltrators, but not enough to matter. So these bikes, okay, these bikes and Terminators, or his Hearthguard, excuse me, they kill 4 Terminators. All of that shooting kills 4 Terminators. Now that's actually a really good turn. I don't think there's another turn in the tournament where I lose. That's not true. There's one other time where I lose more than 4 Terminators in a turn. So that's not enough. Okay. So I bring one of those Terminators back. Now I'm back at 7. And I move them forward. I shoot their crack missiles and kill some bikes with them, and then charge them into those Hearthguard that are standing next to me. Mm-hmm. That's a mistake. So when we talk about learning while winning, the Terminators are AP2. His Hearthguard have a 2-up save with Armor of Contempt. I do 3 damage. He's 2 damage -1. So I kill him if he fails an armor save. But what if he doesn't? And the reason to point this out is so much of the rest of my army is crazy high AP that if I had focused on shooting them and moving the Terminators in a different direction, I would have won by more. Why does winning by more matter, Colin? Because it's how I learn. Those game plan mistakes. What's that, Hank?
Nothing. Just like if you'd have won by more, you'd have won the event as well.
Fair. That's fair. But I did get 97 points, so I'm not going to complain too much. And I got 97. The first game, by the way, was 97-31. So, and by the way, I meant to mention on the first one that I took shock tactics, and it was the only time in the tournament. Because if you wreck your opponent, you don't get to score shock tactics. And when you win, you need points. Mm-hmm. But if they aren't taking objectives from you, which I saw in the first game, then you can't get shock tactics. So, so I shouldn't have put the Terminators into his Hearthguard, but that fight ends up being them basically fighting each other for the rest of the game. And he does die faster than I do. Fine. The Black Knights advance forward with full rerolls and ace the big tank. It's just dead. Then everything else in my army shoots at the bikes, and they all die as well. So at the end of turn 1, I've killed 5 of 8 Hearthguard. I've killed the big tank, and I've killed 3x3 of the fast bikes. This is over 1,000 points of his army. Mm-hmm. And he says, man, I wish I had done more damage going first. And I said, I bet you do. But That was clearly what went wrong. The problem I see with Votann is you don't have enough threats. And anytime I can map threats against you and say, okay, you have these things that I'm scared of, but these things that I'm not, and I can kind of try to bait out the things that I'm scared of and then deal with them before dealing with the rest of your things. Anytime you set up that situation for me, you're going to have a really hard game against me. I'm not as good at counting to 100 as Hank and the guys from TNG are, but that's something I excel at. If I'm trying to cripple your army to a point where you can't play against me, that's my strength. And I think that Votann really struggle against that. And I'd actually like to hear Chuck's thoughts on that because he's played some Votann.
No, I stopped playing him because of that.
Okay.
It's worse than you're even portraying it. You have so many points in one location, in one thing, and it does great if that thing doesn't get destroyed.
Yeah.
But if it does, you're losing a lot of your output. But then also, what if they just killed like your 2 units of troops and your 3 units of bikes, and now you have to be this weird tri-point holding your objectives, shooting your gun at people, and hoping you can win from that spot.
Right.
Like, it's not. They were, to me, it feels like they were built to have more models in their army, and those points were unacceptable, so they brought the points way up.
Yeah.
And now the army doesn't function super well. I think you have to have an incredibly sharp mind and spend every penny perfectly when you're doing your battle plan.
We're talking about you, Naj.
Yeah, Naj.
I actually think that Votann, there's probably a mixed allied Votann list out there that just takes 1,600 points of Votann in a Votann patrol, and then just takes like 500 points of trash and Imperial Guard, and just uses the trash to do trash things.
Yeah. I'm hoping that they get a second wave, and in that second wave, there's just some 5-man units of guys who suck.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, something. It needs some bits and pieces to kind of bring it all together.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
So I won 97-31. He took Assassinate, got nothing on it. He took Grind, got 3. Grind is a terrible secondary, especially against an army as durable as my Dark Angels list, where you might just kill nothing. Like on first turn, he killed nothing. And then he took Psychic Interrogation, which I just decided to let him score. I could have just hidden my characters, but I just decided I didn't care. So that was my game against Colby. And then third, I played Brooke, and Brooke was playing guard, and I played him on the mission that I most did not want to play guard. Hank and I were actually neither of us wanting to play each other on this mission, and we're sitting next to each other, anxiously waiting for pairings, because it was Dawn of War with nothing deployed in the middle of the table. And what that means for a fast shooting list is you just win if you go first. This mission is the worst mission in the game. I hate Dawn of War. It ruins a whole bunch of interesting matchups. And then you add to that the ability to have no screening in the middle of the table means that any army like Hank's, like mine, that can move quickly and get angles on you is just going to win. And I was really worried about that against Brooke, because Brooke had guard, and he has 2 different command squads actually, because he has a Scion unit and a normal infantry unit. So he's got lots of guardsmen that are shooting you. I'm going to do this very quickly because we're running really long. He brought tons of guardsmen, 60 Cadians, a bunch of Scions, Carsicans, and then in addition to that, he had a Dorn, a tank commander, and a normal Russ. So, is it 2 normal Russes? No, just a normal Russ. Dawn of War, we had mostly little L's. And I put my little L's so that they were little triangles pointing at him on my Dawn of War line, so I could hide as best as I could, which was not that great. Like, we both acknowledged that our armies were not hidden well. He put his L's more at a right angle, which looked more thematic, but he saw when he was deploying his army that was not the way he should have done it. And then he put one long, thin piece of terrain off to the side of the middle objective, keeping me from putting terrain on the middle objective, which was great for him, because if I put an L there, I move the Terminators up and they're just there on the middle objective and they never go anywhere. And as Hank and I've seen in our testing, really hard to kill Terminators behind a wall. Like, what does guard do against that? The Bullgren are going to bounce. The shooting can't see them. Like, what are they going to do?
Throw a double obstacle trash on it. That's it.
Yeah. And that's only if I'm not covering the objective, right?
Yep.
So which I guess would be hard to do. But anywho, so I go first, which was great. Now that I've seen how our army's deployed, I don't know that going second would have lost me the game, but it would have been a lot harder. What I was able to do with going first is I moved my Terminators towards his tanks, which are on the far left side of the table from me, because he didn't want them near the Vengeances and the attack bikes and stuff, which I don't think is wrong because his range is longer than mine. But I moved the Terminators towards him because I know, I've done the math, if he decides to shoot the Terminators, some of them will die. Fine. But then I take all of the Raven Wing and move it to the other direction, and I put the Black Knight unit behind that piece of terrain he put perpendicular with his deployment zone. That was supposed to give him lanes of shooting, but all it did was give me a place to be. This is at the point where I learned that Brooke was relatively new to competitive play, and I should have been being more helpful. Mm-hmm. But if you come to me 2-0 with one of the most crazy good lists at the tournament, I'm not going to start off being helpful. Mm-hmm. So he starts talking about player place terrain and how it jacked him, and I'm like, oh, okay. So we kind of went to more of a learning game at that point. The reality is that I was able to advance and shoot. So I moved the Black Knights behind that thing, and then I put the Talon Masters behind them because now they're completely character blocked. I moved the Terminators up. Attack bikes went and did attack bike things and took some shooting. But I was able to kill the Carsicans and almost all of his infantry on the first turn. I just ran forward. I'm like, hey, I've got high AP and bunches of shots. People think I'm elite focused. I'm not. Here we go. And I just shredded all the as many guardsmen as I could. Anybody I could see. Some units down to 6, some units down to 5, some units at 7. What did this do? 1 million morale tests, which is how I beat orcs a lot of the time. Like, take morale tests all over, lose models all over the place. His counter then killed like a couple attack bikes because he didn't have great options. My Terminators on the next turn charged in, killed 2 units of infantry. Attack bikes and Vengeance speeders killed his tanks, and that was really the game. I would play Brooke 1 million times again. I thought he was a great opponent. Once he saw that what I did with first turn, where basically between terrain and first turn, I put him in check. And he did an exceptional job of trying to get out of check. And I just ended up on turn 3 that I was able to beat. I went check, checkmate. Mm-hmm. But he was wonderful, especially for playing. I think he said it was his 6th tournament game. He did a wonderful job of responding to the stimulus I was giving him, and that's a really important skill. So I was really impressed by that. Mm-hmm. That is actually that one was 90 or 100 to 27. It turns out that if all of your infantry die early with guard, you don't score points. Yep. He got nothing on banners. He got 2 on boots and 8 on inflexible command. Mm-hmm. I did warfare, oath, and engage, and I got 100 points on them. So yeah, that was my day 3. I ended not only with 3-0, but my games were like 97, 197. Mm-hmm. So I was not only in the lead, but I was 10 points up from second place, or 10 points up from somebody who was then right in front of Hank or something like that. Yep. So we go to dinner. We talk about the fact that Hank and I don't want to play each other, and it's now the next morning. Mm-hmm. So the funny thing that happens in the next morning is I get handed Sisters and think, oh, this will be really easy. And Hank gets handed Chaos Knights and thinks, oh, this will be really easy. But we're not both right. So it's true. Hank, so what happens here is on the final day, Hank and I want to not play each other and be first and second. That's the goal. We've talked to each other. We've set this as the goal. Our lists against each other is stupid. Mm-hmm. Whoever goes first has a massive advantage because my army goes 20-something and shoots heavy and has a unit that the Bulgrin bounce off of, which Hank hates. Mm-hmm. And if Hank goes first, I better have really good terrain or I'm losing a lot. So we don't want to play each other at all. So when we get there in the morning, Hank gets 2 Chaos Knight games in a row. So let's what is in general what happens when you play Chaos Knights?
Okay, so what happens when I play Chaos Knights is the Chaos Knight players look at my army and go, oh, that is a whole bunch of ability to kill big knights. So we're playing Arcs of Omens, and I don't have to pay CP for strategic reserves anymore. All my big knights, yeet them directly into reserve. So I played a guy with 2 big knights and 7 little knights, and a guy with 1 big knight and 10 little knights. And the list, like the games go shockingly similar because I get the mission that I like, and I get to go first in both games. So all that really happens is, okay, I go first. The caster can teleport. The tanks get their orders and go really far. And I kill, I think, 3 little knights on top of 1 against the first guy, and 4 little knights on top of 1 against the second guy. And it does so much damage so quickly, and then he has to wait a whole turn before he can bring the big knight on, that I kill 2 more little knights on that turn. So by the time the 2 big knights have come on, he's down 5 or 6 little knights, and he just has board position problems. Like the second guy actually comes in, and he actually does a decent amount of damage to tanks and Dorans with the coming in from reserve tanks and knights and everything, but just not enough. I'm able to like operate a top profile and have my little Mechanicus bro fix a unit back up to top profile, and I just focus on one of them, blow them up, and make sure that with move blocking Scout Sentinels, stop the other knight. Also, move blocking Scout Sentinels against Chaos Knight players is hilariously bad for the Chaos Knight player. I'm able to use move blocking Scout Sentinels in both games to stop the big knights from getting angles on tanks. So I'm able to expose my tanks to shoot 1 big knight, kill it, then use move blocks to stop the other knight from being able to shoot my tanks. Yep. And the entire time this is happening, the Chaos Knight player can't blitz me down because I have 2 big units of Bulgrin that are still relevant countercharge threats against them. So they can't just get into me and start picking up all of my infantry. And it becomes less a time of them putting me off my objectives and me locking down my objectives and them trying to use all of their leadership shenanigans to keep my troops off of their objectives. And if that's the game that they're playing, I'm controlling the board. I'm getting 100 points just because I score all of my secondaries. And I'm going to get 12, 12, 12, 12 on primary. And that's pretty much how both games go. The end. Chaos Knights when Chaos Knights go second into guard and they full reserve their knights, their big knights, it's a real problem for them. And it makes the game into a positional shenanigans game rather than a damage check game. And I think that Chaos Knights have to play the damage check game. They just have to put everything on the table. And they just have to just say, I'm going to roll enough 4+ to not lose. Right. Because if you do the other thing, then you just give me the ability to take all of the board with all of my Heidi infantry, and I get to score just an exponential amount of points that you're never going to be able to catch me on.
Right.
And that's the 2 Chaos Knight games. Yay, I score 100 in both things. Both my opponents score like 70-something points because that is the thing about my guard list is it doesn't really table people all that much. And against like upper tier opponents, I tend to not care how many points that they score because I'm just counting to 100 and I don't really care what you do.
Right.
Yep. There you go. The end.
So Chuck, you played against Christopher Weatherford, I think is his name. No, that's not right.
No, this
is
the
Timothy. You just played Timothy Grant, and he's got GSE, and we are going really long, so I'm going to explain the GSE list this way. It is the new meta GSE list. He's got 3 units of 10 bikes. He's got 3 units of 20 Neos, 3 units of 5 acolytes, 10 gene sealers, and characters. This is the list that takes the board. It resurrects people all over the place. The Neos shoot like hell. The bikes are fast and they hold up the board. This list scores points so much faster than you while holding you in your spot.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about, I think, what the one mistake is I made in the game and how I think it would make a difference. So we're playing Hammer and Anvil where you have the 3 objectives. I don't think it's Scouring, it's the other one. But there's 3 objectives that are definitely mine and 3 that are definitely his. I attempted to hold all 3 of them that are mine. And tried to make a stalemate where we were both getting 8s on the primary. It's ludicrous. I can't actually do that. Had I just taken my 2, I mean, like, I have 2 units of 10 pinks. I could literally just cover the objective in pink horrors so that he couldn't go there, and it was OBSEC. And then put the rest of my army between me and him. and sort of take like a corner and be like, I exist here, I'm getting my secondaries and I'm getting my primary, and just wait until you are done with all of your stuff on turn 3, and then just go out into your army. I didn't. I tried to take up too much real estate. And when he pushed down with me with the bikes, I exposed too many flamers in an attempt to get the bikes off of me. All of that stuff just sort of cascaded into a bad situation where he took the game from me. I think what I want to say is what's really important is recognizing that I'm not going to stop a Gene Stealer Coil army from getting a 45 on primary. He got something like a 58, right? So there was no point in me trying to hold this third objective. I need my 8 points a turn to help me keep up with him. Lock that down, make it impossible for him, and let him do the rest. Would have been, I think, a much better, like a turtle even harder seems weird against an army like that. But I think that's definitely the path I would have taken. And I think it would have gotten me into a situation where I could have done significant damage on him. I also think who goes first is really important, but in the opposite direction. I did not want to go first in this match. Him having to drop and me having one more turn after he's done dropping would have been really important.
Yeah.
Because neither of us is doing anything important to each other on the first turn in that scenario I've outlined. So, but that's kind of the game there. He won 95 to my 75. Again, even when I'm losing, I'm pulling up decent points. I would have liked to have gotten a little more out of there, but he got me all the way down. Like my primary goes 8-4-4-0. And with the amount I lost, that could have easily just been 8-8-8-8-8-8, which would have gotten me another 16 points, which is almost, that brings us within 4 points of each other.
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of learning in that game. I think particularly Zeech is very strange in the way it approaches the game. Gene Stealer Cold is very strange in the way it approaches the game. I don't think I could have ever thought my way through what was going to happen in that game. You just have to push into it a few times and start to understand it to get good at it. So, felt pretty good.
All right. Then you get rewarded with getting to play one of the most wonderful opponents, Drew.
Right?
Drew Robertson. And he had Valorous Heart sisters with a Hospitaller and a Repentia Superior, a Canoness, Morganval, 3x10 Celestian Sacrosands, 2 Crusaders, Dogmata, 2x8 Repentia, 2x5 Retributor Squad? No. Some number of Retributors?
8.
Okay, 8. Rhino, and then he's got 2 Helvrins in a Og's detachment. It's not called that anymore, but 2 Helvrins.
So, first up, like you said, I walked up to the table and I was like, Drew, I'm so glad you're here. My favorite thing to do when I've been playing in a tournament and I've gotten even one loss is I want that last game to be with somebody I know that I'm just going to enjoy the game of 40K with. It doesn't like this game doesn't matter. I want to just have a really good time playing 40K, and Drew basically guarantees that. But then I go on to explain to Drew that most of my army is going to be Strength 6, AP 2, 1 damage shooting. It comes in volumes of like 30.
Sister's favorite thing in the world.
Yeah. He does have 2 up saves, and he is ignoring 1 AP.
That's okay. I bet he kills you fast, too.
Yeah, if he gets in combat with me.
Yeah, right?
Otherwise, it does nothing to me. He's mostly shooting. Most of his shooting is those 2 executioners. But yeah, what I want to talk about this game is this one move I pulled. He's kind of slow, right? Like his army's just like plodding up the table at you. So I took
his army. You're not saying that Drew is kind of slow.
No, he's pretty quick. His army's pretty slow. I move a character who's infantry up onto all 3 center objectives on the bottom of 1. And I wrap each of those characters with infantry models. I think it's 2 units of blues and a unit of pinks. He goes and I start Despoil Reality with each character. Despoil Reality with each character. So then he comes up, he does his best to shoot at one of them with every gun he has in his army, and he takes a unit of, I think, 10 blues down to like 7 other models. But in that thing, I started out wrapped, but then I know where he's moved, so I get to basically span them out into a line that makes it incredibly hard. So it's an 11-inch charge or something like that for him to get to the Exalted Flamer who's doing the objective. So he charges in, he wipes out all 3 of those melee units, and tags the characters that are there. But then it comes to my turn, and all 3 Despoil Realities complete, and I get 12 points.
Yeah.
From there, I just have to exist in corners to get get reality rebels, and then mental interrogation is just available. I have teleporting psychers. He has characters literally everywhere. But he also then, all those things charged in the center of the table to get my stuff. My characters jump out because they all have fly, and I lose a psychic phase and 2 exalted flamers worth of shooting. But 3 units of flamers come up and obliterate everything that stepped into the middle of the table. And that's a large portion of his army. He has basically a unit of sacrosanct to respond with, plus the characters and things. And from there, it just starts to spin out of control. We've got a major points advantage, so he has to be taking risks, but he's not in a position to take risks. And I have many levels of shenanigans to go beyond that. So the game spirals out pretty quick.
Okay.
I win it 91-63 because sisters are still good at scoring. But I think what's important about that is his no prisoner count. He got 4 points off of me, which is just showing like I had so much control over his ability to hurt me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I go into my day 2, and I'm excited to not get paired with Hank. And I get paired into Alex Pina, who I've talked to before at several tournaments, but we've never played each other. And he's rocking Bloody Rose. And he's got Canoness, and then Celestine and her women. Vol, he's got a unit of 5 sisters. He's got a unit of 5 sacrosancts. Dogmata, 9 Repentia, 5 Repentia, 6 Seraphim with hand flamers. Boy, does my list not care about them. 10 Zephyrim, 6 Zephyrim, might be 10 and 7. Yeah, 10 and 7. And then 3 units of 5 Retributors and 2 Rhinos. I asked him about the 10 Retributors I was playing with, and he says, yeah, but with all the changes, they just are never going to survive after shooting, so they're just trade pieces now. I think that's a really interesting way of looking at them. I have played against Sisters a lot, but only with Eldar. And Sisters players do not like Eldar. Eldar is very mean to them. So I go into this game with a little bit too much cockiness. So what, like Chuck said, there's 6 objectives, 3 on my side, 3 on his side. We very correctly block all of them. He takes all 3 sister secondaries because he can pick. It's also the priority objective one, right? So holding the objective. No, that's the next mission. I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But he basically gets to say, this objective behind this wall that's not in my deployment zone, I'm going to get 3 points for holding that every turn, and I'm going to action it for another gazillion points. So the sisters' points are very real and very quick. He also gets to redeploy. So he has a Rhino with the big unit of Repentia in it, and it's sitting in the middle of his deployment zone. Remember, we're both basically 3 pieces of terrain in a triangle on our 3 objectives, so there's a gap between the front 2. And he's got the Rhino sitting there because no matter what, he's redeploying it. It's either going to drive towards me and shoot Repentia out at me, or it's going to move behind one of the 2 walls. And so I try to counter deploy to that. I'm not very worried about his shooting because Azrael's with the Black Knights. So I put my infiltrators on one side of the board. Because I take banners, because this is the point at which I'm in the tournament. I'm like, dear Lord, I have to take a new secondary. So I take Codex Warfare, Oath of Moment, and banners. And the reason with Oath of Moment, there's no objective in the middle of the table. But remember, I'm fast and have things I can throw away. So my idea here is if I go first, I will smash him and stand in the middle of the table. And if I go second, I will throw things away to stand in the middle of the table. So I go first. He pregame moves his Rhino. I have to pregame move first, so I don't. He pregame moves his Rhino behind one of the walls, and then the Black Knights go 23 inches up the side of the board, and some of them get visibility of the Rhino. Then I advance a Talon Master up behind them. It gets visibility on the Rhino. Then I advance an Apothecary up. He gets visibility on the Rhino. That's it, though. 5 Talon Masters, or 5 Black Knights, 1 Talon Master. They can't charge. Oh, there were some attack bikes that got up there too. I basically am just too fast. So in order for him to cover the objective, I have to be able to get some things around it. There's not like the math just works that way. Because I deployed so far forward, because I wasn't worried about his shooting, I was only measuring Repentia. By the way, if he had gone first, I would have pregame moved the Black Knights back. just for those that are wondering what the game was there. So what my plan here is, I need to trade very efficiently with him. He's got several things I'm scared of. The big units of Zephyrim, the units of Repentia, and that's it. I'm not afraid of the multi-Melta Sisters. I know from playing against Sisters a lot that 4-up invuls and damage D6 and it's going to kill some things fine. What I need to kill is the Repentia and the Seraphim. So my plan is I've got enough shooting here where as long as the attack bikes don't have to go to kill the Rhino, their bolters they're the farthest ahead, and their bolters can then see the Repentia. Repentia don't have good saves. 12 bolter shots will really hurt that unit. So here's the way the shooting goes. The shooting gets him down, the Rhino down to 1 wound left. We then have to argue about whether the apothecary can see the Rhino. He has a laser pointer, and we spend a long time on this, but we both agree that it is important enough that we have to both spend time on this. Then the apothecary hits, then he wounds, and the Rhino fails its save. The Rhino dies. The Repentia get out. Some of them die. Then the multi-Melta and bolter bikes pick up all but 1 Repentia. So now I'm aggressively pushed up the side of the board. My infiltrators are standing on the back end of their objective because Celestine and her Secresense are at the opposite objective, and they can just go charge them. So I've moved them far enough away that charge is difficult, because if he's going to go over there, I want to pull him out of position, and the other 5 attack bikes are back in my deployment zone holding objectives. Now, I took banners, and if I had simply started one of my characters on my farthest back objective, I start getting banners points much earlier in this game, and I don't screw it up, and that wins me the tournament, but we'll talk about that later. So now what he does, which is so smart, is he moves that 1 Repentia forward to take Overwatch from the Black Knights and the attack bikes. So smart. So the Repentia goes, I'm in. I decide that I killed the Repentia in Overwatch for 1 CP. I don't know why I make this decision. Oh, no, I didn't. I decided against that. So the Repentia goes in. The big unit of Zephyrim comes in, and they plow into the Black Knights. The Black Knights do not live through this to the wound, which was disappointing. So the Black Knights explode. Nothing else really dies. I think he kills an attack bike. And now I'm in a situation where I need to counterpunch the Zephyrim, but I also need to push forward farther because I need to take more of these other threats that I'm worried about. So the Terminators, it turns out, started with the Black Knights, and so they've now had time through advancing both turns, actually advancing the first turn, moving the second. They now can countercharge the Zephyrim. That's great because now all he has to deal with those Terminators is a small unit of Zephyrim that'll probably bounce, a small unit of Repentia that I promise will bounce with -1 damage, or he can shoot them with a bunch of Melta Sisters. I'll roll 4 ups, and then all the Melta Sisters will be in the open. So I move my fast stuff even farther forward and shoot up his other Rhino and kill a bunch of Retributor Sisters. Unfortunately, this leaves me in position for Morgan Val to charge, so I end up losing for this both Talon Masters, a Vengeance Speeder, and 3 attack bikes, and all the Black Knights. That's what I lose pushing up the side of the board. And this is why the Deathwing Terminators are so important, because they kill the Zephyrim, and then they charge up to the home objective. They kill Vol. They just charge on in. The rest of my army, the shooting that didn't come at the beginning, gets to go kill Celestine, which it turns out they're very good at. Gets to shoot the Seraphim when they drop in off of an objective. So the extra shooting I have is able to kind of pick up his stuff that's spread out. The problem is he's scoring points so damn fast that as we get to turn 5, I'm actually down. So I took Codex Warfare. I got a 12 on that. Hard not to get a 12 on Codex Warfare with Dark Angels. I got a 14 on Oath. That's because after a certain point in the game, the middle of the board belonged to Colin. There was a forest there. Attack bike sat in it. Here we are. I got an 11 on banners. And I got a 45 on primary. So altogether, that's a 92. He took Leap of Faith, got an 11 or a 10. I'm not sure from my handwriting. He got a 15 on Defend the Shrine and a 13 on Sacred Grounds. Really, really impressive. He did end up holding more objectives than me for a little bit too. One of the problems my list has is trying to hold its back objectives as I'm addressing in my rewrite. So getting 45 primary, but slightly less secondary. I don't see the math here. So I end up winning 92 to 88. I presumed that this was a hammer game where I could just slam into the sisters. The only reason I win this game is because he can't kill the Terminators. That's the only reason. And so the Terminators get to basically pick up anything that he sends forward as they move across the table towards him. Without that, I simply don't score points as fast as him. This has made me seriously question my list for scoring points. I think I need a game plan where I could do Stubborn Defiance, Banners. You can do Stubborn Defiance and Banners. I think I do it in the final game. Stubborn Defiance, Banners, and Codex Warfare. And then my list can play an incredibly defensive game in when I don't want to run across the table. So that's what I've been thinking about there. I want to say that I've played a lot of Sisters players. And other than John Lennon, I have not played a Sisters player that is better than Alex. That's why I played Jesse Sell, and Jesse's really good as well. Alex is incredibly good, and it was very impressive to watch him pilot. He made very little mistakes, and he squeezed every point out of me he could. I basically tabled him, and he lost by 4 points. Like it was a hell of a thing. And now the game everyone's waiting for. So now it is the match. The rankings are Colin. Hank 10 points behind me because he gained so many points in his 100 games. I got 92 and he got 100, so he's gained 8 points on me. I'm 10 points ahead, so it's Colin, and then it's Linton and Hank tied, and then Jason Bird in 4th place. The top 3 of us are undefeated. Jason Bird is not. Jason and I go to the TO and say, hey, you have a weird problem. Linton and Jason have already played. So if BCP says, hey, we'll match Colin into Hank because Hank and Linton are tied, then it's going to match Linton into someone below Jason. So Linton, as an undefeated, is going to get to play the second best 4-1 player. Now, it turns out for the last round, they were doing normal BCP battle points, strength of schedule. So it worked out because Linton's strength of schedule was slightly better than Hank's. So I get paired into Linton. Hank gets paid into Jason. Hank gets gifted another Chaos Knight game. Jason comes to me and I say, Jason, Hank has to get 10 more points than me if we both win to beat the tournament. And Jason goes, Colin, I'll do my best. And I think to myself, that I appreciate that sentiment. That is not going to work out. I better go get it. I can't. So Linton's list, I don't have to look it up. Okay. Linton's list is Space Wolves, Successor Space Wolves, +1 to charge in advance, and Tesla 6s, or 6s exploding, Tesla 6s, and Assault Doctrine. Bobby G, who's of course always in a Space Wolf list.
Staple of Space Wolf competitive play.
Now, yes. Bobby G, Librarian, Tech Marine, 30 Wolfen, 3 Wolves, 3x1 Wolves, Astraeus. That is his list. And you might be thinking, that sounds like a meme list. Well, it wrecked people on a way to 4-0.
Yeah.
And he tied, remember, he tied Mr. Hank on points.
He did.
And Hank was blowing the crap out of people. So this matchup is weird. The Astraeus obliterates my stuff. Like, it's really scary. And the Wolfen are really scary for me as well, because they are Thunderhammers with AP3, because Wolfen are always an Assault Doctrine. Now, this list has a really clever trick that I want to point out that people thought was him cheating. Linton, you were not cheating. Don't let anyone tell you were cheating. Linton actually stood up for himself. I'm like, here's what my friends are saying. Here's what he did. He used Codex Warfare, and he scored it in shooting with the Astraeus and combat with the Wolfen on the same turn. People say, but doesn't Codex Warfare say your whole army has to be in that doctrine? It does. Unfortunately, Wolfen's data sheet doesn't say Wolfen are an Assault Doctrine when they're fighting. It says when Wolfen are fighting, everything in your army counts as being an Assault Doctrine. So what that means is he gets to score 15.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he just gets to score 15 Codex Warfare points. He just gets that. There's nothing to be done about that. Don't pay attention to that. That's just try not to get salty.
Okay.
that's that.
That's dope tech.
And then the other tech that's neat is that Bobby G and the successor thing makes Wolfen +2 to advance, +2 to charge, and Wolfen reroll charges. So you're thinking, oh, well, Colin, just shoot the Wolfen. Guys, this is player placed terrain with a unit that goes 8 +2 +D6 to advance and gets behind a wall and then gets ready to charge me. So he deep struck one of the units. By the way, my game plan going into this is to completely ignore the Astraeus. The Astraeus, if the Astraeus is all that's alive, I cannot lose. The Wolfen, so here's another example where we have a threat count situation. He has 6 things that do damage to my army. Bobby G, who's slow. He's not really slow, but he's slow by my army standards. 3 units of Wolfen that I obliterate if my guns see them. And an Astraeus. Okay, that's his damage. By the way, the 3x1 Cyber Wolves are so amazing, Space Wolf players. 15 points. He threw them out to get his priority objective. He threw them out he put them on objectives and then shot me off the objective with the Astraeus. Because the Astraeus is so big that it can touch multiple ruins at the same time and see through multiple pieces of terrain in multiple angles. There is no hiding from the Astraeus. So he took, Linton took Shock Tactics, Oath of Moment, and Codex Warfare. I took Stubborn Defiance, Banners, and Oath. Now, my plan here is this is priority objective. So I know this is very obvious which objective he's going to give me priority objective as. So I pick that as my Stubborn Defiance objective as well. I move my Terminators to that objective. I put the Talon Master with OBSEC behind them, and I say, there. I am going to score 15 primary and 15 secondary with this Terminator unit. And if the Wolfen come in, I don't think math-wise they kill them because of hitting them for 2 damage a strike rather than 3. So that's my plan. If the Astraeus wants to shoot them, it's not shooting Ravenwing. That's wonderful. That was a really good plan, and it was a good plan to the degree that I need to be able to do that. That has to be a game plan that my list is built around. I do mess up deployment. I have these again 3 pieces of kind of 3 objectives spread out, and I need to. Well, there's a middle objective, right? That has a forest on it, and then there's an objective that I can hide, and then there's 2 objectives. One that's my Stubborn Defiance objective, and one that's his priority of target. And I put the infiltrators back to do banners, and I put Azrael and the Black Knights on one side of the board, and the Terminators on the other side. This is the only game where Azrael and the Terminators are deployed away from each other. It's a big mess because Azrael can't ever get back to them, and he doesn't have anything to do once the Black Knights leave. If Azrael were to have started on my home objective and put up a banner, you guys hearing a theme? Then I wouldn't have gotten 9 on banners. I would have gotten 15 on, well, 14 on banners.
If Colin was at all good at action secondaries.
No kidding. No kidding.
I don't know how many times when we're playing I have to be like, did you want to R&D this turn?
Yeah, especially on the first turn of the game. Starting off thinking about doing secondaries is not my strong suit. So he goes, and the Astraeus can see the Black Knights, and he kills 5 of them. Okay. The Astraeus kills 5 Black Knights. He expected to kill more. I have a 4-up invul and a 6-up feel no pain. I'm doing some work. He kills 5. He moves the Wolf up to take his priority objective, and also moves 10 Wolfen up towards that objective. The other 10 Wolfen are off the table. The other 10 Wolfen go and hide behind a wall next to my priority objective. In response, I advance my Terminators up with their banner, and I move attack bikes and a Talon Master off at an angle so they can kind of see around the train and shoot some Wolfen. That doesn't work because Wolfen do have a 4-up invul. So I think he loses 1. Like, you could just roll well. But the other side, the Black Knights just pick up Wolfen. And we end up in a situation where I have 5 Black Knights and he has 5 Wolfen. That all kills each other. And that objective is lost to me for a little while, which is bad because it's his priority target. Here's the other thing that happened on turn 1, though. Colin realizes that the Astraeus cannot be obfuscated, and my speeders can stand behind obscuring terrain and shoot through windows at it. or just above the terrain, because the Astraeus is the size of a Ford Escort and is sitting on a giant flight stand in the middle of the table. So I think the Vengeance Speeders don't really have any targets. I don't want the Astraeus to just pick them up because they're great against the Wolfen. So I put them behind cover and shoot at the Astraeus. Now this is altogether 4d3 shots at strength 9, AP4, because they're heavy. AP4, 3 damage. But the Astraeus is in cover because he went first. And he could also have made it -1 to be shot for 3 CP. He doesn't have the CP to do that, and he certainly needs interrupts. Like, that's not real. Okay. So he's in cover. So he gets, and he has an invul, right? He has an invul for 5 up because of the void shields. The void shields, there's 2 void shields. You have to do 3 damage to each of them to get them to go away. If you don't do 3 damage to a void shield, it heals back to full in the next turn. My first plasma speeder kills both void shields and does an additional 9 damage to the Astraeus. My second Vengeance speeder does another 9, or altogether, the Vengeance is just the 2 of them put it at 15 wounds left in the void shields. This is why the Astraeus is bad. Because math, that wasn't what was supposed to happen. But frankly, I'm hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, and you're saving on 5s. That's it. That's what happens. You cannot predict durability out of that. By the way, Linton will tell you as well that the Astraeus is not good, and different shooting in that spot makes this a better list. I think he's exactly right. So the Wolfen come into the Terminators. Between fight on death and punching, they kill 6 of them, which is not ideal. The Wolfen also managed to start sweeping around me. Oh, the other Wolfen come in from Deep Strike, and they managed to sweep around this and to start picking up characters. They kill the Ancient. They kill the Talon Master that's over there. They kill the Apothecary, and he doesn't have Assassinate, but he sure does have Oath. And he's absolutely killing a character a turn to get Oath points. Linton does an exceptional job of getting points. Now, why did I let that happen? Because I mispositioned the Terminators. This is how you get better while winning. I watched the Wolfen come in and sweep around and get my characters. Then on the turn after that, I put my Terminators into a different job when they should have just charged back into the Wolfen and dealt with the few Wolfen that were behind them. I presumed that my shooting would kill that mostly damaged unit of Wolfen and it'd be fine. My shooting bounced. That Wolfen killed all my characters. That was too aggressive of a play. The Terminators did not need to go anywhere. They were where they needed to be. They just should have charged and dealt with the Wolfen. That's what should have happened. That's a big mistake that made a huge difference in points, but didn't cost me the game. So now this is the problem with Linton's situation. Oh, and Bobby G runs forward, and I actually ran 3 attack bikes up to stand in the way of Bobby G because he can't ignore them. He is a monster. And so they are able to stand between terrain and move block him. Mm-hmm. Are they going to live through this move block? No, they are not. So I've now kept Bobby G back. The Astraeus is very hurt. It's going to behave at top profile fine. The Black Knights and the Wolfen have killed each other on one objective. The only Wolfen that are left on the other objective is 5. So if we're doing threat counts, he has 5 Wolfen left. This is at the end of 2. He has 5 Wolfen left and a wounded Astraeus and Bobby G. This is where it's completely my game now. My game plan is all that matters. He can't possibly kill me fast enough. I end up basically just holding that Stubborn Defiance objective, and I kill the Astraeus easily on the next turn. Bobby G just starts walking through my army. I kill his other characters. He had Servitors on the back objective. 3 attack bikes go driving 20 whatever inches over there. They advance, shoot the Servitors off the home objective, and we come down to the final turn of the game. Hank is standing nearby, and I say, Hank, did you get 100? Hank says, yes. And I said, Linton, we have plenty of time. We know we've done the math. I'm going to win. I would like to see if I can get 91 points so I can win the tournament. Linton is down with this. Hank is down with this.
Yep.
We're all on board with this plan. We all of us talk through the turn. Hank doesn't offer suggestions. I don't blame him. But we all talk through the turn. It was actually very helpful that Hank was there because on one really important shooting, I forgot that Bobby G was in the forest. So Hank did a good job there. So all he has left is Bobby G. Bobby G runs to the middle of the table and stands there on a forest and says, I am going to Oath of Moment. I have not died yet. if you kill me, I might come back. If you come in here, I'm going to heroic intervene and kill either a vehicle or a character, and that's going to get me more of the moment points. Here I am. So I circle my army around him. Now, the mistake I make here is I don't actually need to give him a vehicle to heroic intervene to and kill. It doesn't matter, but that was not correct. So I have a Vengeance Speeder, a Talon Master, 4 Terminators with 2 crack missile launchers, 3 attack bikes, and Azrael, and 3 infiltrators. Now, if the infiltrators go back and place a banner rather than rushing forward like idiots and getting shot by Bobby G, that also gets me the points I need. But hey, who's good at banners? Not me. So I shoot all of that, and he makes every 3-up invul. Every single one. I think, Hank, if I'm remembering, I think there was 1 3-damage shot that went in that he rerolled the save on.
Yes.
From the Vengeance Speeder.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have full health, Bobby. Actually, I think I hurt him a little bit. I think he has 6 health left.
Yeah.
He has 3 health left going into the close combat phase. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Now, I want to be clear. The only way that I get a point here is if I kill this character because of Oath of Moment. That's the only way I get a point. But he has to die and not come back.
Mm-hmm.
The Terminators charge in. Azrael charges in. The attack bikes charge in. Exactly. Everybody into Bobby G. Mm-hmm. He makes every 3-up invul.
He does.
Every single 3-up invul, giving me 90 points exactly, which ties Hank and I for points, which means I get to go to the TO and say, good news, your 2 undefeated players have tied on battle points. And he says an F word that we're not going to say. So, Hank, why is it so appropriate that Bobby G was the one who gave you the tournament win?
Oh, because I am a massive Bobby G fan. I have like 4,000 points of commission-painted Ultramarines led by the best Primarch, Bobby G, whose superpower is paperwork. I am a huge fan. He is the quintessential representative of space Rome and fiction, and I just knew that Bobby G wasn't going to let me down because he's a G like that.
But probably the highlight of many tournaments for me in a long time was Hank and Linton and I, with an hour left in the round, right? There's no hurry happening here. We are all of us cracking up, okay? Yep. We're hysterically laughing. I'm going to be honest, guys. I've won a lot of tournaments. I don't care if Hank beats me. Mm-hmm. Like, either we're first and second or second and first. We're both from Best in Tabletop. We're both content creators for the network. Like, this is fine. And I think I was really clear about that all day. I didn't do the normal anxious anxiety that I normally do about this. Like, I told Chuck that morning, I'm fine with Hank winning the tournament. I just want to get second then. Yeah. So that was just an incredibly fun thing to have happen. The end of the game was I only got 14 on Stubborn Defiance because the infiltrators had to start on that objective because the first point of Stubborn Defiance is scored on my first turn. Mm-hmm. I've never used Stubborn Defiance before in this list, so I just missed that. It's not an action secondary, Chuck, so you have to tease me somewhere different.
It's pretty close.
I got 9 points on banners. Linton and I both know that if I had done banners better at the beginning, I just get a lot more there. I got a 12 on Oath, which was good. I did manage to hold the middle of the board for most of the game, but eventually Bobby G was in the middle of the board, and then everything I sent to the middle of the board died. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't great. The end result was I got 90 points exactly. We talked about that. And Linton got 80 points, I think. Let me look at the app because I don't have the math right on my sheet here. We did the math a lot of times. He got 74. It was 90 to 74. Yeah. So there's a lot to be taken away from this. And none of it is that Bobby G rolled well and I lost the tournament because of it. Yeah. That is simply not what happened. What happened is... what happened is, well, first of all, I played 2 way harder games on day 2 than Hank did.
Accurate.
Just both of my games were totally losable on day 2. Hank's games were not losable on day 2. Mm-hmm. That's fine, though. It's all okay. What I learned is, as I look through my games, there's mistakes I made. Now, was I nice to myself about those mistakes? No, that's for better humor, better gamer. We'll work on that later. But those mistakes that I saw throughout the tournament, any one of those being better wins me the tournament, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. That's the way I'm going to look at it. because it's not that Hank won. And by the way, Hank won because of strength of schedule. That's how they did the tiebreaker. I will say that now that I have thought about strength of schedule and looked at it at a 5-round event, I think it is a terrible tiebreaker.
I think win path is better.
Yeah, because the reality is your early opponents, you have no control over how good they are. And if they go 0-5, your strength of schedule is bad. So that's just the thing. But fine. Like, I'm not being sassy about this at all. So there was a lot of opportunities for me to optimize in the tournament. One of the things that I think is incredibly important when you're at a certain level of 40K, the level that Hank's at, that Zach's at, that the TNG guys are at, where you are in a very real chance to top 8 any tournament you're at, you have to make sure that your win plan scores 100 points. It's really important because even though people don't do battle point pairing anymore, they do at the end typically. And the tiebreaker is going to be battle points. And so if I had gotten 100 in the losses, in the wins where I got 97, for example, if I had gotten higher than 92 against Alex, the sisters player, or if I had gotten more than 90 against Linton, that makes the difference. So, or if Hank had gotten more points in his Tau game, which is the main place that Hank could have gotten more points from. So really a lot to learn there. I thought that it was really valuable for me to get to look back at the games and see where I could have optimized points because, like Chuck pointed out, that's not my strength. Actually, in Marvel, that's a big thing, counting to the victory points. So I've been doing that the last few games of Marvel where I'm really trying to teach myself that awareness where it's not how do I incapacitate my opponent so that my army tables theirs. It's how do I score more points than them, even if I'm losing things.
I also think, Colin, you should be nicer about it. It's not that you're not good at it. It's your weakest point, but that doesn't actually make you bad at it.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You still scored lots of these points.
Yes,
you did
sure.
quite a bit. So you're not bad. This is the place where you can focus to get better.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's 100%. Yes. And we all have to be nice to ourselves about these things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about list changes. My main thing is that I'm going to change my list to have more infantry. I think that I need anti-deep strikes, so I'll probably get more infiltrators. I need to be able to start on objectives and have one of the characters or the Terminators put up a banner and 2 other things put up a banner. The reality is that my army plays the entire game on your side of the table. So if I put up these banners and have dudes hanging out on these objectives, it's amazing. I also thought the new troops are sticky OBSEC for Marines rule with the infiltrators was incredibly helpful to me because I don't have the stuff to hang out. So like the infiltrators could start somewhere, put up a banner, advance, then move and put up a banner. And then that turn, the attack bikes or the vengeance speeder that were holding that objective now get to leave and go do something. That was super valuable to me. So that's the main change I'm going to look at on my list. I don't think selfless healer is right. People that are good wipe out units. Bringing Terminators back is cute. When the list does well, honestly, the list has a lot of CP late game, so you can just use the strat to bring back Terminators. If you're going to do it twice a game, you're spending 2 CP to bring them back versus the 1 CP. The +1 to advance and charge Warlord trait, I think, is just better in the army.
Also, if it makes you make a charge, you got your CP back for selfless healer. Like it.
Right, exactly. But it makes the Terminators go faster on their first turn and charge better, which is a really big deal. It also makes all the bikes go 1 inch farther, which is just even more obnoxious. So that's where I'm at on my list. How about you, Chuck?
So you'll notice in all the games I talked about, I basically didn't even talk about Be'lakor. Like the only story I had about Be'lakor was the time that he failed me. And then the Screamers, I don't think I talked about them at all. They spent most of their time move blocking. Because their value is so low. So I'm going to take all those points out. I'm going to put a couple of Demon Princes in because the places where I did find value in Be'lakor was where he was giving out reroll ones to hit, particularly for shooting. And Demon Princes can just hang out in my lines and be basically invincible because the rest of my army can't be shot to death and give those rerolls out. And then they also, having 2 Demon Princes will give me a similar kind of punchback to like Hank is talking about. It's not like I've got punch, but like if you come in here, there's costs you will have to pay. And then at that point, I'll just keep 1 Fate Skimmer. He will just be like he'll become my warlord. So he gets the warlord trait for +1 to cast, and the relic, or not the relic, the war gear upgrade for +1 to cast. So he's casting at +2, basically pretending to be a Lord of Change for less than half the cost. I'm going to up my pink horror count to 30 from 20. They were what were winning me most of the games. But I think the biggest thing I learned was if my opponent is trying to shoot me to death, I'm going to be okay. I just need to run my secondary game, get my points, and I will probably win that game. What I really had trouble with was when the Chaos Knights came into me, and when the Gene Cult came into me. In our practice weekend a month ago, I removed Burning Chariots from my army because they weren't good in the shooting matchup. I was correct that they weren't good in the shooting matchup. My conclusion was incorrect because where they are really good is if somebody wants to rush me, adding 3 more dudes who are doing 2d6 strength 6 AP2 shots or 9 more strength 9 AP4 damage 3 shots to my army, even for just 1 turn, and then charging into stuff is really valuable.
Yeah.
I basically missed them the entire tournament because I didn't play a ton of like heavy shooting. I played a lot of really interactive games. And they would have been amazing on the board, and they would have done basically the same thing Bellacore did, except for they'd be in 3 different places doing it, which is something that I love. So that's kind of those are the changes I'm making. I won't probably get to play a game until the next GT, so we'll see. A couple more GTs, and I should be ready for a GT.
Hank, how about you?
Okay, so mostly I learned that, so I have a decent amount of points invested into making sure that both of the Dorns in my list can get a 5+ invuln save. What I found is that mattered in literally 0 of my games because the Dorns were either A, hidden and not being shot, or B, getting the first strike and removing threats to themselves with their first volley of shooting. And there were a couple of times when my opponents had some shots on them, but it was almost always strength 8 shooting. Basically, I just learned that either A, I'm going to be able to remove threats to the Dorn before I expose them. B, if my opponent has shooting that can threaten a Dorn, it's going to kill it even through a 5+ invuln save. So I'm removing the character that gives a 5+ invuln save to a vehicle and the tank ace from a vehicle that gives it a 5+ invuln save. And then I'm going to replace that tank ace with the one that gives an extra chapter tactic to a tank, and I'm going to give it the +4 inches of range, and I'm going to upgrade 1 tank to just all Melta all the time. So it's going to have like 28-inch range Melta sponsons and 16-inch range Melta nipple guns, and just have one be the hard target Dorn, and then have the other one be the I have heavy stubbers, I have the chain cannon in the hull, be the crowd control Dorn. There's that. I am going to be swapping all of the special weapons on my guardsmen because it was just double plasma and double melta all over the place. I'm just going to put flamers on everyone because you know what guard infantry does? It is either, they're either hiding and not shooting, or they are getting move, and sprinting 14 inches across to the table gloriously to their deaths. Might as well get 2d6 flamer hits at the end of that because it's an assault weapon. And it incidentally makes it some random better shooting against Gene Stealer Cult, which is a matchup that I need to prep for harder than I thought I was. I'm going to have one of the Bulgrin squads. I am not 100% on it, but I've already bought the models for it. I'm going to remove the Bulgrin mauls from one of the units and replace it with the Grenadier gauntlets.
Yeah.
Like...
How could you not, Hank? I don't even care if it's worse.
So like what I found out is even in the matchups where the Bulgrin counterpunch is important, Ponyman can only order 1 unit per turn to be really good at close combat. So what always ended up happening was, all right, 1 unit's going to get move, then it's going to go out aggressively onto an objective that is in the middle of nowhere, and hey, look, let's see if my opponent can do something about those toughness 5 -1 damage, 2+ save, 4+ invuln save Bulgrin. And a lot of the times my opponent couldn't do anything about it, and I got it for free. Why is that unit paying 25 extra points for melee attacks they're never going to use? Let's go ahead and just give them some assault weapons that can just throw a bunch of dice at stuff. Yeah. And hey, guess what? Also turns out it's pretty good into the Gene Stealer Cult matchup because it's just 30 shots if someone has a 20-man unit. that's all boulder shots. And hilariously, Ponyman can order that unit to take aim, which means they go up the ballistic skill 3+. Their strength 4, -2 AP, blast D6, 18-inch range assault.
Reroll ones?
So, no, the Ponyman can't give them reroll ones, and he also can't give them the reroll to hits. So they will just be hitting on 3s, 4s if they advance. Mostly it's just a bunch of free shots that I wouldn't be getting otherwise.
Well, they're just going to stand on an objective anyways, Hank.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah. So we're going to try that out, see how it works. Okay. Then I have an extra 25 points that I'm going to use to upgrade my tank commander to the Steel Commissar, so that he'll get Perfectus orders. And he can also order Bulgrin with them, so I can have both Bulgrins be OBSEC. I can have both Bulgrins have the, hey, look, screw you, Gene Stealer Cult, 12 inches, no deep strike.
And then Officer of the Fleet.
And then the last 25 points I'm saving is an Officer of the Fleet. Not so much, again, I made the joke that all of these changes I'm making incidentally make my list better against Gene Stealer Cult. I haven't played Gene Stealer Cult yet, so I'm not afraid of it and over prepping for it. This is just having played this event. Master of the Fleet is definitely a thing that I think I can make a lot of good use of, because I fought 2 Chaos Knight players and a Tau player and another Tau player where if he wouldn't have made a mistake early on, reserves would have been very, very, very relevant. And there's like, if people are just like, oh crap, I'm going to get alphaed by that Imperial Guard player with his shenanigan plan, I'm going to put some important stuff in reserve. Having a Master of the Fleet just be like, hey, don't come on this turn and give me 2 completely unanswered turns of my tanks running amok before you get to bring your thing on, and I've probably already done crippling damage to you. So completely independent of anything else, every change I'm making is making me way better against Gene Stealer Cult. I also am going to spend a CP and give my command squad the Warlord trait that lets them also know Perfectus orders. Again, so because
as you guys can hear, Hank is really undecided about what changes he's going to make.
Oh yeah, I am removing a lot of useless stuff and doing things that make my stuff better, because I would really love to be able to, at 24 inches through the Master Vox, be able to tell a unit of guardsmen to be double OBSEC, which you need Perfectus orders in order to do. So, like, all of these things going to make the list a lot better as far as I'm concerned. Make it better at scoring points, make it more resistant, make it just better at overall.
Okay.
Yep.
We've only gone twice as long as I intended.
Crazy.
Which I think is pretty good.
Yep.
That's good for us.
I want to thank Chuck and Hank for talking through their games, and we will be back in a few weeks, probably 3 weeks, because we'll do this after we go to Rosehammer.
Seems like
that's going to be a 110-person tournament. The TNG guys are going to be there. We're all going to be there. I'm pretty hype for that. I think it's going to be really, really fun. I am very inexperienced at tournaments, so it's going to be fun for me to get to play against really, really good players and see where I'm at on that. I'm going to take Dark Angels. I think we're all taking the things we just told you about. So we'll be back with more content in about 3 weeks. For Best in Faction, he's Chuck, he's Hank, and I'm Colin, because someone has to be. And we'll be back soon. Bye, everybody.
Later.
See ya.